health. And I would also like to recognize tonight Dr. Marcia from Central Carolina Community College. We're glad to have you here. Jimmy Love, attorney for the school board. Good to have you here. And I don't think I didn't see anybody else from the school board here. I thought some of them were coming tonight. So, okay, maybe they'll be a little bit later. We are keeping an eye on the weather in case something happens. We may have to bail out quicker, but right now it looks like we're doing okay. So we're going to try to move through really quickly and see if we can get everybody out of here safely. So anyway, if you would, stand with us if you like while Commissioner Frazier gives our invocation and remain standing for Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow our heads, but as we bow, if you would like to join in with us tonight in our prayer, we're going to repeat the model prayer that Jesus told us all to pray. And so we're going to ask you, if you will, if you want to, join in with us in our prayer as we pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have a couple of additional agenda items, and I'm going to put them as H and I. One is sale of school property. We'll get more about that later. The second one is a resolution that's been brought before the board. I think we're just going to discuss it tonight. I don't think there's going to be a vote on that, but just to discuss. So if you'll add those two on. And are there any other changes, additions?
Yes, sir. I'd like to get an update on the EDC chamber merger. I've seen the media
Okay.
report, but I'd like to hear it from the players on this table. I call it like I see it.
Okay, so we'll add that in, okay? All right, anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
Move to approve it.
Okay, have a motion to approve. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we'll move on into approval of consent agenda. Any questions there?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous? Okay, public comment. I've got two on the sheet, but I have something just before we start. Keith Clark called me this week, and he also sent a note that he has called and apologized to John and I for his verbiage in the last board meeting. He wanted to come tonight and make it a public apology, but he had a conflict in schedule, and so he said he would try to make it for the next one, come and apologize to the whole board for his remarks in the last meeting. So look forward to seeing Keith back. Remember, public comments, 3 minutes, and Ed, if you would you keep track of the 3 minutes for us? And the first presenter, if you would, give your name, address, and the first one is Jay Calendine.
Mr. Commissioners. My name is Jay Callandine. I live at 210 Irish Drive, Apartment F here in Sanford. And, just briefly, transparency is something that a lot of us really like to see in government. And I'm not questioning that it's not in play tonight, but I am a little concerned. It's my understanding that I found out about the subject of tonight's meeting at the same time that the school board members found out. And it's also my understanding that about 6 months ago in a meeting where some of you were present, some of them were present, I do believe the superintendent was there, maybe the county manager, but the company that's going to present to you tonight was actually suggested by the school board, hey, this is a good idea, this isn't something we definitely want to do, but this is kind of where we think we might want to go. And they were told uncategorically, no, there's not the tax money for it, we don't like the green energy aspect of it, and it's not going to happen. Now, maybe I'm grossly misinformed, but I kind of think I'm not. And if I'm not, then the only good reason I can see for it is a bad reason. And I hope that's not the reason. I hope that this has nothing to do with politics, because I really hope that the business of the county is above that. Now, I'm not elected to anything. You guys know me as a guy who, basically just sounds off a lot. And that's really what I'm doing tonight. But, I appreciate the time to speak. I wish you all very well, and I hope that you make the best decisions that you can, because don't know if this board has the statutory authority to build schools, but I know the Board of Education does. So, thank you.
Second one, Bill Baker.
Yes, thank you. I am Bill Tatum. I live at 2511 Wellington Drive, Sanford. I am a lifetime resident of Lee County, and I'd just like to address the board, and not and only in a historical perspective. Some 10 years ago, Chairman Herb Hinks initiated an informal meetings with the chairman of the school board. Also in attendance were the county manager and the school superintendent. Each chairman would then invite another member of each board to attend the meetings. These meetings were meant to be, and indeed achieved, a positive rapport between the two boards, resulting within a year the embarrassing acknowledgement on the part of the school board in reporting to the commissioners the construction fiasco at Southern Lee High School. Mr. Reeves, I'm sure you remember quite well what ensued from that construction project. Nonetheless, the two boards continued their mutual respect, and subsequent building projects were approved. The building at Sandley Middle School, Floridale Knight, the Children's Center, were both built with full endorsement by the commissioners. The meetings continued and have continued. However, in the past 3 years, the respect and goodwill has been replaced by a sense of acrimony and disrespect on the part of the leadership of these commissioners. In fact, I have met Robbie Ferris, tonight's presenter, and found him to be very reputable, and I know that you will enjoy his presentation. I'm told this afternoon that Dr. Lynn Smith has also met and interviewed with Robbie as a result of traveling to Hope County with Mark Acanosho to see a design-built leased building. Dr. Smith intimated that he brought this at a recent meeting some months ago, and as Mr. Callandine mentioned, was summarily dismissed. And I'd say this in conclusion. The quarter-cent sales tax referendum was supported by the commissioners, passed by the citizens of Lee County. Now, there's no question that money went to a much-needed renovation, restoration at Lee County High School. There's no question that the Board of Education and the children of Lee County need an elementary school. But I challenge this board's leadership to remember the pledge to the citizens of Lee County during that campaign that the first construction dollar after the renovations of Lee County High School would go to the much-needed construction on the campus of Central Carolina Community College. I say that with reluctance. I was a member of the school board for 8 years. My first priority will and always will be to the children of Lee County. But a pledge was a pledge. Thank you.
Okay, start out with old business, consideration of Johnson Lee Harnett County Action Community Service Block Grant, and I believe Marie Watson is not here. So,
Was it, Chairman Parks, was not that, I know that it was tabled until this meeting, but if I may say, I think that Commissioner Dalrymple was scheduling a meeting, and I'm not sure if that meeting has taken place yet, and so I would ask that the board would consider to table it or until the next meeting or until we have the meeting with the Johnson Harnett Lee Action.
are you making a motion as such?
Yes.
Well, the issue with that is, the paperwork must be filed on the 31st. We were able, because of her schedule and mine, the only time that we could find for her to come and meet with our board would be tomorrow morning. And at that point, I felt like if we had enough of us that can make that commitment, even if we had to hold a special meeting, to take the vote after questions were asked and answered. She was very willing to come here tonight until the weather this morning, you know. But for her to take an hour and a half drive from Smithfield and then go back, she was a little bit reluctant to do that. The only commissioners that I heard from as far as the meeting was concerned, Mr. Womack said he had a prior commitment and couldn't come. Mr. Reeves was not able to attend. I didn't hear from anyone else other than Mr. Smith, who said that he had concerns.
I said you wouldn't say that.
Okay, well, I didn't get that one. But you know, I did ask anyone if they had any questions, if they could get them to me, and I would do my best to answer specifics tonight on her behalf, or we can table it and meet before the 31st and take the vote then.
Mr. Chairman, the main point that I think some of us were after in the last meeting was to explore with Johnson Lee Harnett the option of redirecting the funds away perhaps from the way the program outline was laid out and look at redirecting those funds towards an existing 501 organization that was in the county that provides the same service. It's already in existence and that could provide it, and it would make an incredible difference in Lee County.
You're talking about Family Promise.
Right, or something like that.
Well, the thing, you know, in the lengthy conversations with Ms. Watson, who's the executive director, they already partner with Family Promise and have since Family Promise really got off the ground. And Family Promise refers their clients to Johnson Lee Harnett.
Oh, they sure do. I know I'm on the board at Family Promise, but what I was going to suggest though, Amy, if I could,
Sure.
that the partnering with Family Promise is a token partnering. I mean, it's like $1,000 to $5,000. I mean, it's not anywhere near what this grant would be. This grant was for like over $150,000.
Sure.
Okay, so,
But the nature, I mean, if, for public information, I can go through for the public, the nature of this grant and explain it. The way this community block grant is formulated, from a legal standpoint, is they just can't take that chunk of money and give it to a single nonprofit.
why can't they?
Well, I mean, I don't understand the legal ramifications, we probably have to have counsel go through.
I mean, it's,
rules and regs.
it's a 501 that applies for community action grant dollars that could pass that through the same way that we do the Workforce Development Board. I mean, the Workforce Development Board has contracts that they administer those programs. The same thing could be done with the community action block grants.
Sure, and Jim, maybe that's something that over time, you know, we can sit down with Ms. Watson and her staff and see if we can, maybe move, you know, some of those funds to do more, with Family Promise. But, you know, they also have contractual agreements with other organizations. They can't just all of a sudden say, well, we've got to move money
Right.
that we've, you know, already agreed
Sure.
to.
If you look at your budget there, a lot of the funding, most of the funding was actually for overhead. They're going to hire program managers. I'm saying, why would you want to go hire new people when you already have existing agencies in place that have people that do those services? That's creating another bureaucracy to do the same thing that we already do in the community through other agencies. I question that this is nothing but a jobs program for more bureaucrats, that it doesn't really make a difference in the community. Whereas you take that kind of money and you put it into an existing organization, it would make a huge difference. And one that's well trusted across the county.
Can I?
Sure.
I think one of the things that I learned on that board, and also I'm a part of that board as well, and those 7 people, I think that the same, and you was on the board before,
Sure.
and there is nothing changed since you was on the board. Ms. Watson is creating or have created the same plan that was there when you were there. She just replenished it. So I don't think that there's other people who are being hired. These people are going to be doing the same thing. It's just that there is funding for these 7 people to do those jobs. And the job requirement, or the requirement for those persons is listed in this grant. And so I think that it would be better for us to have her in front of us and to explain those things. I think that we will get off track trying to say something that she knows more about than we do. So
I agree with that.
Let me just ask a couple quick questions. One, what happens if the motion to approve fails? Where does that money go? What happens to that money?
That's up to the Johnston Lee Harnett Board where they allocate the money.
Right, okay.
The month, they have the grant.
No, I understand because I understand the program.
Mm.
Secondly, why wouldn't it be prudent for this board to go ahead and approve it and send in our recommendations for change to their board and allow for an exchange to take place between the 2 boards? We could make recommendations, but that does not mean we ought to turn down the money or the opportunity to be served by that program. And as for finding another 501c3, that board and its executive director can make that determination whether they're eligible to apply as a subcontractor or whatever. But I know you have a motion on the floor, but I'd offer a substitute motion to approve and that we send forth a recommendation to their board.
Andrew, any other comment?
Well, my concerns were, having read this, contrary to what they do in Washington before they vote on something, I found a number of contradictions, statements in here that just baffle me. numbers that don't match. We're talking about 32 low-income households, then there's 52 low-income households, then there's 30, then there's 110. I'm just sitting there going, okay, what do we mean? The numbers don't match.
The other thing I would add to that is that last year, as I recall, in reading the report of the audit, they found major findings on their audit, on the allocation of funding and how it was spent, and they had corrected major deficiencies. They had to report back to the federal government. I got real concerns about whether or not all those remediations have been accomplished and whether they're spending the money the way it's supposed to be spent. I still have concerns about that.
What did you do when you found, when you had those concerns? What did you do?
I couldn't do anything. I'm not on the board any longer. The two members on the board
How
are.
does that stop you from making a recommendation from this board to look into it?
What I was recommending is that we look at it, maybe thinking out of the box. Instead of spending money the same way we've always spent money, have the money directed to a 501 that's proven, that has an existing strong board of directors here, and that we know makes a huge difference in the community.
Well, quite frankly, the money is out of our hands. We're simply giving them the authority to serve the county.
I don't know, Commissioner, I don't know if it's out of our hands. I haven't been able to ask that question directly of Ms. Watson. I mean, I think, I could be wrong, but I think that they have the authority to contract that work down to Lee County. I believe they can do that.
No, I don't disagree with that. That's not what I'm saying. But if it doesn't come to Lee County, it goes somewhere else.
I don't know that we're gonna lose that, that they'll lose that authority to do that. I'm not sure, honestly. Tell me, Amy, what happens if we vote not to approve today? What happens?
The board just determines, who gets served. Just to give people out there, I mean, I feel like we're talking, and the and the folks that are out here in the audience, and that are watching, we're talking about the Johnston Lee Harnett counties. Right. They have a community service block grant program, and they have received the grant. This is sort of a formality that we do on this board to give it our blessing, but it basically revolves around the STARS program, and that is. After being on the board, it sounds kind of cliche, we hear it a lot, but it's to give citizens in need a hand up rather than a hand out. It deals a lot with affordable housing education, with employment skills, and with transportation. Initially, they start out with citizens in need. They do a questionnaire to determine the participants' need and to provide guidance in making their lifestyle changes in order to bring them out of poverty. That's the main goal. And I'm trying to really break this down. They provide funding to increase the scope and efficiency of their agency in dealing with poverty, whether it's affordable housing, employment opportunities, educational advancement, affordable daycare issues, financial literacy, home ownership, early childhood education, just to name a few. The STARS program has counselors, and those are some of the folks that we're talking about as far as salaries are concerned. They provide workshops on a wide range of topics that are critical to the issues that our participants are facing. Topics include income tax preparation, energy conservation, credit counseling, financial literacy, home ownership and renters insurance information, nutrition counseling, job readiness skill building, renters' rights, consumer credit education, all to help participants become advocates for themselves and their families and raise them out of their situation of poverty. They have intense case management. That's their fundamental tool to use in helping participants reach their goal of self-sufficiency. And this is one of the things that I really enjoy about being on this board. Getting participants to own their problems plays an important role in finding the solution. they're not just told that, you know, they're in a bad situation and here's some help. They get education, they get guidance where financial instruction or education opportunities are provided for them so that they can sort of, you know, get on the right track and become self-sufficient. The board, the staff is extremely well trained. A lot of them are FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation certified Money Smart trainers. We have started senior counselors in Lee County that are SOAR specialists. Let's see. Okay, here's another one that might be important to people if they have questions. The Johnson Lee Harnett Agency uses the data from all of their intake systems as a tool in verifying the validity of the clients seeking services from our partners and lay people in the community. This process helps determine if the needs presented by the participants are legitimate and to reduce the frequency of duplication and or abuse of services, which kind of speaks to what Commissioner Womack was saying before. You know, they do a very good job of looking at the applicants, of vetting them and making sure they're not receiving duplication of services. And I mean, I could sit up here, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted our board to meet with Ms. Watson and her staff, because they do a tremendous job. They partner with Family Promise, which is kind of based with First Baptist here in Sanford. Also through the Presbytery of New Hope's outreach ministry, partnering with local Presbyterian churches. They match people in great need with the Presbytery to help them with rent. They also, through their partnership with different churches, identify senior citizens that need help in staying warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Again, I can go on and on. Their audit, the questions that were addressed, were brought up in the audit, were cleared up. That kind of happened as I came onto the board. All of those were addressed.
So you are 100% sure that all the audit findings have been remedied now?
Well, I'm never going to be 100% sure of anything in my faith. But,
okay.
You know, I mean, that's just the way I am.
Well, you can be 100% sure of the one that they did do, the one that they recorded that they did. My question is, why is it so critical that we have a staff person here, the director? Commissioner Smith, did you take time? I see you did your homework and made a lot of notes. Did you, by chance, forward any of your concerns to that board or to the executive director?
I did not. And one of the reasons I didn't, I sit on the mental health board, and the executive director there can make it a point to visit each of the 9 counties that she represents, address each of the commissions at least twice a year. And I thought out of courtesy that we would get that opportunity so that we could address these issues. But apparently, that's not the point. Here's some key things.
Now, what is the point?
I'm coming tonight, but the weather.
Well, we had to table this the last time because...
Well, it was pulled from the consent agenda. She wasn't even told that it was going to...
Why was it on the consent agenda? I don't know. I'm asking.
The way it was on.
No, it was on the consent agenda the last meeting.
Right,
last
that's-
meeting.
that's
Because
what
it was
I'm
because we were
saying.
going to rubber stamp it, but we pulled it off the consent agenda because we didn't want to rubber stamp it. We wanted to evaluate the thing. We had a lot of questions about number of families served, about their track record from last year, whether we're really making a difference in getting families out of poverty, or whether we're just throwing more money at the
And
problem.
the email, and that's something I'll address later on in commissioner comments, but the email that I received, as far as pulling that from the consent agenda, I got on Monday morning because it was sent late on Sunday night. And so I got it the day of. So when I tried to reach her to see if she could come to our meeting because it was going to be pulled from the consent agenda, she couldn't come on that short of notice. I mean, just like, you know, sometimes you have to have 2 weeks notice. I mean, you know, we have to let them know. They you know, have to have some courtesy from our board.
Well,
And as far as tonight, you know, she she had planned on coming, but now that the weather's taking a turn, she
Well-
just didn't feel safe driving that far.
That may be your recollection, but my recollection was last week late, when we had asked for her to be here for this meeting, you had said that this was before the weather was known. She couldn't be
Right.
here tonight, that we had to set up a meeting for Wednesday morning instead. So this wasn't a weather issue, this was that she just had a conflict tonight.
And then that changed, and so she was willing to come tonight. I mean, that all transpired over since Friday.
Yeah, that's true. But I have a couple of questions. I think we asked this last time, but I don't remember getting any figures. How many families have they worked with in Lee County?
Now, that's something I don't know off the top of my head. And that would be good. 110 sticks in my head, Ricky.
I think that's the total, I'm
But
not
I think
sure.
that's the total.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to put a number on that, Charlie, because you've got families and you've got individuals. You know, you've got some taking classes, you've got some that are doing physical help on their homes, or you've got the churches coming in, and then you've also got the families that refer to CUOC. And then CUOC also refers families to them. But I mean, again, that's why Kurt makes a great point. Yes, I think we should try to have her come maybe before the board twice a year. If there's that many questions, you know, I think she would be more than happy to
There's
get that on her schedule.
18,
18?
yeah.
Okay. So out of that 18, is that mainly just counseling and training? Because it says something about passing any help off to the churches. So is it just counseling and training?
Yes.
I still think though that I wouldn't want to quote that number as being,
Well, I'm looking at it as successfully transitioning to achieve real sufficiency. So,
I guess the other question I have is, do we have, like county agencies and other 501(c)(3)s that are operating directly here in Lee County that are doing the same thing? Are we duplicating efforts?
And Amy, on that same line, one of the big concerns I had in their budget, they're showing $20-some thousand in travel to go to conferences. And I'm saying, why do you need to travel to go to conferences when you take that $20-some thousand and give it to Family Promise and make some difference in lives, in family lives here in the county? People that are truly getting out of poverty, getting back on their feet, getting jobs. You know, why would we spend money on bureaucrats going to out of state conferences when we could spend that money right here locally?
well, I don't consider them bureaucrats. If you meet these ladies that do these jobs.
I have.
Well,
I know them.
Well,
I mean,
then you know what they have to put up with, Jim, as far as the rules and the regs change on the state and federal level on a yearly basis. And you're talking about their audits and things. They have to learn how to do things almost all over again every year. I mean, we have staff members that look at how much has changed in the Department of Health and Human Services in the last couple of years. And they have to follow a lot of those rules too.
Well, we wouldn't be upset if they would come to Lee County for that conference.
That's
yeah,
true.
and they were going to do a conference here at one time. They decided they had to go sit into another
And
county.
how many did they go to when you were on the board? I
The
mean,
STARS program? I don't recall them having the STARS
who are
program.
you talking about that? Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about the same ladies that they're talking about that work in these program
So
areas.
they didn't go to any while you were on there?
No, they went to a conference. It was supposed to have actually been held in Lee County, and it got shifted to another county.
Okay.
But
they
that's
didn't
another
go.
issue. The point I'm making is that if you ever are going to make a change in a federal grant program, you have to get it out there, and you have to make people uncomfortable to get out of their modus operandi. I mean, they're going to continue to spend money on the same programs, doing the same thing they've always done, without any report back on successes, on what's working, what's not working. We don't ever get that. We just say, approve the money so they can keep doing what they've been doing, instead of looking at an alternative.
That's not the motion that Robert suggested, for us to give the suggestions, and we can work with them over the year. But you said the right word, though. It's a federal program.
Right.
So, let's meet with your brother and see if he can do something on the federal level. I mean, we can't fix something here that's a federal law. We can push up.
What we can do is we can
make
say,
a lot of noise.
I think what we can do is we can go back to them and say, before we approve, we want to know what we're approving. We want to know specific outcomes from the year before. We're not going to rubber stamp something that we don't know anything about.
She gave us all of that.
No, she gave us a budget that showed $20-some thousand in travel to a conference, to rental assistance, and a bunch of other things, but she doesn't talk about what they did with the money last year and what it did. What difference did it make in Lee County? I can tell you right now, it didn't make a whole lot of difference in Family Promise, because that partnership there is a very small amount compared to what private donations are doing. And I'm just suggesting, before we approve sending $150,000 to $175,000 to an organization we don't know what the heck they're really accomplishing, we probably ought to take a look at it. Let's pop the hood and look under the cover.
We're starting to repeat ourselves, I think.
I'm not sure that is so. I think that Ms. Watson has outlined the activities and what their program does. And when I look at this thing and it talks about counseling and helping people with their finances and budgeting and trying to make people sufficient when they get back out into the workforce or even in society, I think that's a good thing to do. Sometimes we get hypocritical with this stuff. I hate to say that our board is hypocritical. We were here.
Not your whole board.
Yeah, right, okay.
So what do you mean by hypocritical? What does that mean?
Well, I'm going to get to my point in just a moment, if you would. We sat here not long ago and we were complaining and about a few thousand or whatever amount of dollars. But there was a listing, a penalty for a listing for McNally Morelli, and we said that the monies may hinder someone from having a job. And we passed we just said $25,000. We think that that's too much. We'll do $5,000 and whatever the case may be. But then we look at people trying to help people, and then we have, there's nothing wrong with trying to find out whether or not there is mismanagement of money. I think that we need to get a hold of the monies. But when you're trying to help people who are going through a situation of not having jobs and losing jobs, and trying to help people with counseling and these kind of assessments, I think that we ought to look at that in the same way that we look at these other things. And we get sort of hypocritical with this. We want to pass the buck and do other things, but then when it comes to helping some poor and downtrodden people, then we look at it differently.
So what's hypocritical, Commissioner, about me wanting to make sure that money is spent on the intended purpose and that it actually makes a difference, as opposed to, because I'm not talking about not spending the money, I'm talking about giving it to an organization we know will spend it correctly, as opposed to an organization that had major findings with the federal government.
Those same 7 people, when you were on that board, they were doing the same job, and you were on the board. I just came on the board. So I'm trying to get a hold of everything on the board. But you were on that board for many years.
No, I wasn't.
How long have you?
I was on that board for 2 years, and I voted against a lot of what they were trying to do at the time, trying to keep them from wasting money.
Well, I don't know. I can't say that it's waste. I don't know about whether it's waste. You say it's waste, but I just feel that we need to look at this thing from the same set of lenses that we look at everything else. And that's the only thing I'm saying now. Whether we want to see people mismanage money, that's one thing. I don't want to see anybody mismanage money, because that's wrong. But when we are trying to help people, we ought not to try to always knock it out or push it to the side or not fund it. And that's what I see a lot on this board. And so I wish that we would start looking at the whole totality of what we do in the same set, out of the same set of lenses.
Let me ask a question, Mr. Frazier.
Yes.
You and maybe you're both on that board. Is there any questions that come up from time to time on how the money's being spent? I mean, don't they give you a report each time you have a meeting?
It's just like this report that they have presented to all of us on this board here. We see a printout and also documentation of what's going on.
So,
Every time we meet, they, you know, we have a financial report at each meeting. And sometimes some of the board members question things, and we have some healthy debate over it. But, you know, since I've only been on to 2 meetings, you know, since I've gotten back on the board. But they're doing good work with a very small staff. And you gotta remember, they serve 3 counties, and we're the smallest by a long shot. But I mean, in this day and age, their clientele that they're being asked to serve is getting larger and larger.
yeah, I guess the reason I asked the question is because there was a couple of areas in the report where they used different figures for the same thing, and I'm sort of wondering, okay, what are they really spending in this area or that? And so that's the reason I was wondering if there's anything that comes up.
No, and I understand that. It even for me,
You're a
You
board
know,
member,
it-
you're not in a position to know that answer.
no, I mean, even for me, it
I wouldn't
wasn't as easily digested. We get very spoiled by our financial department here in this county. We really do. And so it wasn't put together as an easy read. And, you know, you've got 3 different counties, you've got multiple programs, you've got different types and different levels of services. I still think, you know, I agree, we're going in circles, but with.
I'm not. I'm simply saying there's another board that oversees that. There are 2 other counties, and I don't know what restrictions they placed on their money. And at the very least, we could make a recommendation to the existing board of Lee, Johnston, Harnett, and let them decide whether they want to honor what we're asking or not. And if not, then we take further action.
Okay,
I withdraw my motion, and
I'm sorry.
I withdraw my motion
That's
and
what I was gonna ask you if you wanted to withdraw it. Okay.
withdraw my motion.
Mr. Reeves, if you would restate your motion.
Simply to approve it and allow the members of this board or anyone else who wants to join in, send forth recommendations or questions regarding the use of the money, the funding for here in Lee County. And if you got suggestions on how and what nonprofits ought to be used, submit that as well. That's a very long motion, but you get the gist of it. The first and foremost is, they've got a board of directors, and we're the county. We can accept it at any point in time we want to pull out, we just pull out. But don't hold up progress and don't deny people who may be in need, regardless of the number. We don't know every report we get. We don't understand all the numbers we get.
Okay, so the way I understand the motion, though, is we're approving it so they can operate within the county
That's right.
with the grant money that they have.
Allotted for
And
this county.
We can send information back to the board requesting clarification.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's good enough.
get that. Amen.
And you can, I'll be happy to take it, or Ricky to the next meeting, or the executive director's email and information is on the front page.
Okay.
Let me ask for clarification on the motion, so I clearly understand what we're recommending. We're recommending approval, but there's no conditions under that approval, correct?
The conditions will come after.
So in other words, we're gonna approve it, and then we're gonna make a request. No, we're gonna grant them the authority to spend the money, and then we're gonna make a
No,
request.
Commissioner, we can't run every board.
I'm not trying to run it.
Well,
I'm just
obviously you
trying to
are.
understand the motion, okay? So let's get the motion clarified.
Well, what's difficult?
All right, so we're gonna approve them spending the money the way they've got it planned. There's no caveats or conditions placed on whether they've remediated all the federal audit requirements. In other words, if they've got any outstanding requirements from the federal audit, that we still allow them to continue to spend the money. and to make sure that all we can do going forward for the next year is to make recommendations to how possibly to get more value for the money. In other words, that's all we're allowed to do. Is that correct?
That's not correct. That's not correct.
I think they already have the funding as to whether,
That's-
how they want
that's
to spend it.
correct.
We have no control over it.
Right.
All right, so the motion is to approve, but we can still make recommendations on how the money's to be spent.
Yes, sir.
And Ricky and I will take, I mean,
All right.
we're on the board, you know, we will share your concerns and you're welcome to come to the meeting.
I'll provide a list of what I've got here.
Okay.
That's all I
So
said from the
any further
beginning. Get a list together. We do that with the school board. We do it with any other board. Just
Right.
submit what you got your concerns about. So,
I could support the motion if I might make one further comment. I could support that motion if Ms. Watson would make herself available
Sure.
during the budget cycle this year, like she did last year, if she'll come to the budget cycle meeting, and if she would present a report on the STARS program. I would like to know the number of families
Directly
served,
in Lee County.
particularly Lee County, yeah. The
And-
number of
and I-
families served, what services were provided, what her measures of success are, so that we understand what her outcomes were, and that we know what value we got for the hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent on the
And
program.
she'll be happy to answer your questions on the audit too.
you get all that again now?
Okay, so you and Kurt and whoever else has questions, we'll get those to
I'll get
Gaynell.
those in.
Thank you.
I'll get them to Gaynell, and that way we'll make it official. Good, good,
So
good.
everybody can have a copy.
Yeah, and while you're doing it, find out what 501(c)(3)s in Lee County are eligible for funds.
Okay, I think we've beat that one to death. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, update from Fort Bragg Regional Alliance, Mr. Greg Taylor. Where you got the Fort Bragg?
Mr. Chair, I want to thank the board for this opportunity to address you tonight, and we'll try to be brief. We do have a handout that sustainable growth management strategy that actually we just got that executive summary this week. And before I get into the presentation, I have somebody here tonight that's going to make a few comments, and they have another meeting to go to. So on this document that you have, the Sustainable Growth Management Strategy, your planner here in Lee County chaired the group of planners in the region who worked on these. And it was planners from all the counties in the region that got together multiple times and did a lot of work on pulling this together. And with that, Bob, if you would please.
Thank you, Greg. And Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Commissioners, this group of planners from across the region have been working together for about 2 years now and have been very diligent in their interest in effecting a very good land use plan for the entire region, good growth strategy. But we also wanted some takeaways from this process, which included a land use modeling techniques. So we would have some more vehicles in which to judge our own projects in terms of how they impacted us in Lee County, but also throughout the region. I think we've been successful in both counts. We've enjoyed the process. The consultants that worked on the plan itself have been very diligent in their efforts, and I commend that process to you. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if I can.
I got a question. What automation, what tools are we using to accomplish that land use update?
It's called Community Viz. It's a land use model that has been used in a couple other counties. That basically we are able to assess what kind of infrastructure, economic, job creation, thoroughfare impact would affect on the local area and also the region.
And who has the license for that software?
We will have that license, well, all the counties will have that license when the plan is approved.
Okay, but so we'll all share the same software, the
Yes,
same
yes,
same
sir.
files?
That'll give us some uniformity, Mr. Womack, that I don't think we've had before.
Right.
The planners all throughout the region come from a variety of backgrounds. Some are much more sophisticated than others. this modeling technique will help, especially those counties that don't have that degree of sophistication.
And it would be presumptuous to think that if we're not members of the regional task force, that we would have authorization to use that, to have subscription to that software? Is that
It's my understanding that it's only the members who.
right? Only members of the regional task force, okay. Okay.
Is that correct, Rick?
Yeah.
I'm saying that correctly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because right now, we're not paying our dues, right?
I didn't know.
You didn't know that, okay, all right.
I'm just the chairman of the.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
Thank you, Bob. Let's see if we can, all right. I wanted to make sure you are all aware that our annual meeting is coming up this coming Friday. Our speakers include Major General Christopher Haas, who's Deputy Commanding General of U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and Brigadier General Ferdinand Izari, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff for the Reserve Command. And also, of course, Colonel Sanborn, who's the Fort Bragg Garrison Commander. And of course, you were all invited to that. If you hadn't seen an invitation before, then you certainly are invited and encouraged to come and attend. Expect about 200 people there. The Fort Bragg Regional Alliance was originally formed to coordinate the military community response to the growth resulting from BRAC 2005. Since then, the Board of Directors has seen fit to expand that mission in several ways. One, to begin preparing for the next BRAC. Another is that to make sure that our counties were working together to maximize any associated economic development opportunities. The fear was that somebody located near Fort Bragg would get all of the economic development phone calls, and the rest of the counties in the region wouldn't get exposed to those economic development prospects. Over time, the Alliance Board of Directors has also seen the need to expand the mission to include connecting and coordinating engagement with military-related state initiatives and representing the region at national forums such as ADC, AUSA, and on topics such as impact aid. Recent accomplishments include we were selected as the 2013 Association of Defense Communities Defense Community of the Year. That was for our overall body of work, but one of the major points in there was the mental health collaboration. That effort was actually started back when Mr. Womack was on the board, and it has continued. One of the major outcomes of that, bringing all the mental health providers together, along with TRICARE and Womack and Veterans Affairs, has been that before, when a soldier was exiting the military and they had problems, they just exited. There was no handoff. With all of the PTSD and associated issues, traumatic brain injuries and all that have occurred over the last few years, that's not a thing that a military community wants to see. So our providers and Womack and Veterans Affairs have worked together to change that way that handoff wasn't occurring at all now and is occurring. The next meeting of this group, which is continuing to work together, is coming up in February. So that they had a whole list of things that they wanted to work on, improving the coordination between the various entities, and they are continuing that process. Another thing, you just were exposed to the Sustainable Growth Management Strategy. That's been ongoing for the past year and is wrapping up now, actually. You're the first ones to see this executive summary document that Mr. Bridwell talked about. We just got that this week, and so it's going out to the planners for review and approval. So the final document may look a little bit different because it hasn't been out to all the planners for their input yet. State efforts include, we represented the region on several task forces that were started during the Purdue administration, and we also received a state allocation of $125,000 last year. The state has put in the budget this year $1 million to work on BRAC, and from the state perspective. And there was also mention of military communities, but we don't know what that will look like yet, and they haven't made their decisions on how they're going to spend that money. It is in the Department of Commerce. We also represent the region at meetings of the Military Affairs Commission and associated committees. Our board nominated several of its members to the new Military Affairs Commission, but none of our nominees were selected.
Where would the nominees come from then?
All across the state. There seems to be a significant pocket of influence from the Camp Lejeune area.
No joke.
Our local membership includes Lieutenant Colonel retired Robert Anderson, George Brees, and Joy Thrash. General McNeil and Senator Wesley Meredith are all from the Fayetteville area. Brigadier General Paul Dordahl, retired, used to have the job that I have here now with the Alliance. I believe he now lives at the beach, but he is actually vice chair of the Military Affairs Commission. And he will be speaking Friday at our annual meeting. The committee structure is base sustainability and community affairs, economic development, which includes BRAC, quality of life committee, and a legislative committee. It's important to note that the committee has 2 voting members who are legislators, one from the State House, one from the Senate. Both of those members are from the Jacksonville area. There are 2 non-voting members, one from the State House, one from the Senate. They're non-voting. Senator Meredith is a non-voting member, and the House member is also from Jacksonville. So there's a heavy flavor there for the Marine base.
Greg, if I can interrupt you, the chairman is a Marine.
I'm gonna say hoorah.
But you know, I wouldn't make too much out of that though, because the Military Affairs Commission is really there to serve all the people of the state, and we haven't been disadvantaged by anything that they're doing, have we?
No,
Okay.
not at this point. We certainly haven't. And as a matter of fact, Senator Brown, who is one of the voting members of the committee, and I hear from people they have trouble getting in to see him. I have stopped in multiple times when I was in Raleigh without an appointment, and he has made time for me every time I have stopped by. So I certainly feel like we have friends on the committee.
Right. And to be honest with you, if I recall correctly, if there is a next round of base realignment and closure, that the 2 principal hubs of growth activity will be Fort Hood, Texas, and Fort Bragg, North Carolina, correct?
Well, that's what's expected. Of course,
Right.
until it actually happens, you really don't know. But we should be in pretty good shape.
Right.
The biggest thing we had going against us back in 2005 was the lack of an interstate connection to Fort Bragg.
Right, we got that.
With I-295, that's being corrected. And now we have FORCECOM and Reserve Command. We have the Special Operations Command, and that's a growing part of the Army. We should be in pretty good shape for the next round of BRAC. And even if there's not another round of BRAC, with all the cuts that are going on, it's going to impact us as well, just like Army 2020 that they've already begun implementing. And we're losing a brigade combat team. But and we're moving into the next slide, so I'll move to it. One of the things that the board wants us to do is to try to identify what do we want. You can sit back and let the next BRAC happen and take whatever you get, or you can try to figure out what you want and try to find a way to make it happen. Some military activity does more for the communities than others. One of the targets that we've identified is Program Executive Office Soldier, which is the office that develops all of the equipment, the clothing, and everything for soldiers. And it's currently located at Fort Belvoir. But the companies that do all this need to be located near where PEO Soldier is operating as well. That's the kind of activity that we would love to see. And PEO Soldier also has highly paid civilian workers as well. But that's the kind of thing. We've identified several targets so far, and I'm going to be meeting with General Dordahl to talk to him about how the state's effort can help us with that. Because we don't want to sit back and just take whatever comes. We want to see if we can influence the process for the betterment of our region. And I think it's significant to note that we're really the only organization that's prepared to respond to BRAC request. When Army 2020's public hearing was held in Fayetteville, there were speaker after speaker that got up and talked about, you know, how losing a brigade was going to hurt us economically, you know, the economic impact of it. But that's not what the Army wants to hear. You know, they need to know what are the reasons. Yeah, the impact on the community is bad. Okay, but what's the military? You know, what is their impact? You know, they're looking to save money. You know, what are the impacts that they need to see? And the document that they created had several was wrong in several respects. One of the things was it said that the lower student population from losing a brigade would be a positive impact on student-teacher ratios. That's not the case. You lose teachers, you lose state funding for teachers. When you lose students, you lose state funding for teachers. You know, we pointed that out in writing and at the public hearing. Our brigades all have new facilities at Fort Bragg. You know, need to make sure you maximize the use of the assets that you have. Unfortunately, the Army was made to get into this public comments late in their process. So I wonder how much of what was said actually went into any decision that was made. But that's the thing about a BRAC commission. They want all this information. They're asking for all this information. They will be asking for all this information in advance. Also, there's a big push out of the Department of Defense, and there has been enabling legislation that was recently passed to encourage more community partnerships with the installations. We want to partner with Fort Bragg and the communities around Fort Bragg. They're going to want to partner any way they can. We don't know what those partnerships might look like right now. But without a regional organization to be at the table trying to make this happen, you can see where the partnerships that are formed probably wouldn't be a bigger picture of partnership. Our federal efforts, ADC, Association of Defense Communities Engagement. I serve as co-chair of the Veterans and Military Families Council, and I'm a member of the Federal Outreach Advisory Committee for the Association of Defense Communities. In my capacity as co-chair, I was asked to participate in their strategic planning effort last June. And the thing that I made the biggest deal out of was the need for ADC to be more of a voice for communities at the federal level. The example that I gave was NACO. NACO is very engaged in the legislative process to protect the county's interest and to advocate on behalf of counties. When I brought this up at the strategic planning meeting, one of the board members of the board of directors disagreed with me, saying that their partnership with the military was too important. And I pointed out to him that you can still run your proposed legislative goals by people within the military to get their input. But the fact of the matter is, if they're not going to represent defense communities, what are they doing? And the Department of Defense isn't funding their activities. It's the communities who are funding their activities. And there were several heads nodding in agreement with me around the table. So I am optimistic that there will be increased engagement by the ADC with the people at the federal level. And they have started forming a defense caucus, Defense Communities Caucus, in both the House and the Senate. So there is potential for that to occur. Two of the issues that I've been covering at ADC, one of them is impact aid. Another one is DoD funding to support military community engagement. One of the things that I believe it was the General Accounting Office recommended coming out of RAC 2005 was that DoD dedicate resources, have a dedicated resource for community engagement. And I'm trying to build on that through ADC. Our federal funding that helped start the Fort Bragg Regional Alliance came about through the BRAC. We were a BRAC growth community, and so we got some of that funding. The military doesn't fund anything to do with their communities now. And the message that I have been taking to ADC is that how can they expect the counties, the local communities, to want to partner if they got to pay all the bills? A partnership, people share the cost. And actually, I was called a couple of weeks ago. Now they want me to do a session in San Antonio on that very topic. And following the session, they've set up a meeting with for me with one of the leaders on the Army side of the defense community engagement piece. So we might be beginning to make headway. A little more on impact aid. These numbers are actually from 2009, which until very recently was the most current year. It takes several years for the impact aid funding to be distributed. But the sad reality is that in 2009, there were over 369,000 military children who were eligible for impact aid to help fund their education, and only 17% of these children got 90% or more of their maximum allocation. Of the 117,000 children from Indian lands that depended on impact aid, 66% of these children got 90% or more of their maximum allocation. It's also noteworthy that in 2009, 25% of the national impact aid funding went to communities in Alaska and Arizona.
So what feedback are we getting about current year? I know one year we got zeroed out on here in Lee County. What?
That was 2009, I believe. You were eligible for 159,000 and you got nothing.
Right.
2010, you were eligible for, I think I have it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
2010, you were eligible for 231,000, you got a little over 11,000. In 2012, you were eligible for 278,000, and of course we don't know what you get out of that, but it won't be a big increase.
Now this money goes direct to the school system, does it not?
It goes to the school system.
Right. And we're continuing. You guys are continuing to lobby. You contact Representative Elmer's office, and you work with the legislature to try to improve on that performance.
Last year, we had a meeting with staffers representing most of our region's legislators. I don't remember everybody who was there at this point, but most of our region's legislators were
On this
represented.
slide right here, are we not receiving the funds till at the end of the year rather than the beginning of the year?
The reason for the delay is because they give you some in that year, then you get some more the next year, and then they give you the final amount in the third year. So it's spread out over a 3-year period. Most of it's in the first year, but because of that, the way it's spread out, we don't get final numbers until obviously much later.
Well, we have the numbers of students that are enrolled at the beginning of the year, right?
Yes,
So we have our numbers, we don't get final numbers from the federal government?
you don't get the final funding from the federal government until later.
A couple of quick questions, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but does Harnett County track like that too?
Harnett County
As
is,
far as what they're eligible, I mean, not numbers, I know they're bigger, but percentage wise, what they're eligible for and then what they wind up getting.
similar. They're actually eligible, I believe, right now for, it's over $3 million and they get a few $100,000.
Right.
Hope County and Harnett County get more as a percentage than you do
Sure.
because their numbers are bigger, and that's the way that that this formula they have in place works. To give more to Indian lands and others, they take it away from those who get the least. It's
So that's why we broke that.
Right.
it's an interesting formula that I have
So who
argued
controls
about.
that formula?
Our state legislators.
Is it the state or?
Well, I mean, our federal
legislators.
excuse me.
Because I know whenever I worked for the Federal Aviation Administration, when I moved somewhere, the school got the money immediately. And so they've changed some rules in there somewhere.
Well, every year, the schools send out a paper to the parents to fill out.
Yeah,
September
that's
30th.
correct.
And some counties are put in a lot more effort in getting those papers back than others. I don't know how much effort Lee County puts into it.
Well, I can tell you
But
just,
for $11,000, you can't afford to put much effort into it.
well, but I can tell you that, I think it was 2 years ago, Dr. Moss sat down with a couple of us, and he was putting forth an appropriate effort to try to wrestle that money out of the feds. We were not very successful, but it wasn't because of lack of trying. It was because the federal government is just, they're an enormous bureaucracy, and there's lots of favoritism being shown. You saw Alaska and Arizona, I think, whoever their legislators were on the appropriations committee, that's who got all the money because they directed it their way.
John McCain?
Yeah. And so what we gotta do is we just gotta figure out how to get the money being sent back to military lands instead of Indian lands.
Well, and I'm trying to coordinate that with other military communities. The more people that we have crying to their legislators about this, the more chance that there's going to be some change. I'm working on getting the numbers together for each of the members of my Veterans and Military Families Council for their particular communities to give them at our next meeting so that they'll know what it means in their community. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take getting that information to other military communities so they can join us in trying to get this changed.
Thank you.
Economic development, we have a partnership with North Carolina Southeast that does our promotions, and then the responses that come back from that are exposed to all of our counties. We have had businesses that have toured locations in our region from these efforts. We have not landed one, at least not a major one today. But getting them to come look at your community is half the battle. If you're not, you've got to be marketing yourself to be able to get them. We have had a dedicated effort at AUSA every year for, I believe, about 5 years now. And our organization sponsors the North Carolina Reception Governor McCrory came and spoke at this past October. This year, we've added a new one called the SHOT Show. And it's a little bit different than AUSA. It also focuses on hunting and those types of things, but there is a dedicated part for the military as well. And actually, NC Southeast could not get into the show, but we were able to get them in through our association with Fort Bragg. So NC Southeast will be representing us at the SHOT Show coming up in February. You need to be, I've already mentioned the DoD's push for more military community partnerships, and we've already talked a little bit about the future of the installation and how we want to try to influence what happens in the next BRAC rather than just letting it happen. We don't know when the next BRAC is going to be, but there will be another BRAC. All the military services are wanting another BRAC, needing another BRAC, and this one will be focused on cutting. The last BRAC was really focused on reorganization. The projects within the last BRAC that were focused, that did do cutting, paid for themselves in a couple of years. It's all of the reorganization that didn't pay for itself very quickly. And the next round of BRAC will focus on cutting, but again, that should be good for us. Because right now, we get the cuts because they're kind of across the board cuts. In another round of BRAC, they'll be looking at how they can spend the money smarter, and that's good for us. Over the years, we've taken steps that we hoped would lead to sustainable funding for the organization. Unfortunately, that did not succeed. Acquiring outside funding to sustain organizations such as ours is difficult. You basically got to find an area where you can be competitive with the private sector and deliver something if you want to make money. One of the ideas in the past was forming the Association of Defense Communities. The Defense Business Association. Bragg Alliance is the organization that stood up the Defense Business Association. Joy Thrash hired Joy Thrash to run it as executive director. And there was a discussion at the time about this being a way for the organization to bring in some revenue. With corporations paying dues, that kind of thing. But the problem was when corporations are going to pay dues to an organization like that, they want a say in the leadership. They want seats on the board. They want to know that they want some control in the organization. And you can't really blame them for that. And one of the strengths of this organization has always been our connection to the local leaders. Our board consists of county commissioners. Kurt's on our board now. County managers, mayors, town managers, that's our board. And whenever we have a regional initiative where we're having to bring partners from across the region to the table, we need that gravitas. If there's an issue with a department in one of our initiatives, we can pick up the phone and call a board member and say, can you take care of this? And the problem magically goes away. If we switch over to being, if we were to switch over to being something like a membership organization, like the Defense Business Association, we wouldn't have that. And it wouldn't be focused on the same types of things that we're focused on now. One thing that's been suggested is that this spring we should organize a meeting of our county managers and commissioner board of director members to discuss the organization's future. That will be up to our board, but I certainly would be willing to organize that if my board members tell me Lee County has been a very active partner in this very successful regional organization that continues to provide significant value. And it's value that Lee County is not getting anywhere else. We hope that you will consider putting us back in this year's budget as a non-recurring item for the original level funded amount. Questions?
Just for clarification, let me make the point. What you just said was that you need a restoration of funding for this year, the current fiscal year we're in.
Yes.
You're not talking about the upcoming fiscal year, you're talking about the current fiscal year. You need that for sustainment of the organization.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just like we need the Department of Defense to come to the table as a partner and participate. You know, our regional partnership, we need our partners to participate. And so, yes, it's this year.
Question, the recent budget passed, I understand some of the sequestration cuts were reinstated. Did that have any impact on our budgets?
It did not. It did not. At this point, we are entirely out of federal funding. And we also do not have any state funding at this point. We are, of course, looking for federal funding opportunities and state funding opportunities as well, because it's, as a former county commissioner, it's important to me that we are leveraging other resources besides just local resources. And that's one reason that it's such a burr under my saddle about the Department of Defense not stepping up to the plate.
Hey, Greg, we talked earlier about the possibility of getting Secretary Decker engaged. And if this board were to put together a resolution encouraging her to treat the Fort Bragg Regional Alliance as yet another economic development organization, would that be helpful to you if we approached her and twisted her arm to?
It certainly couldn't hurt. We were, Gene Powell and I, who currently chairs our board, and I were scheduled to go meet with Secretary Decker back in December. And something came up, and we had to change that from her schedule. And we rescheduled it to a couple of weeks later in December. And then I found out that's when the Military Affairs Commission was meeting at Fort Bragg.
Right.
And I needed to be at that, so I had to back out this past time. And we're trying to reschedule with her for early next month, hopefully, to get on her schedule and talk to her and let her know about the alliance and the things that we've been involved with. And something that's come to my attention recently is that apparently the numbers out of Commerce related to military and military communities are from 2005. Right. I'm trying to confirm that report. And
it's horribly outdated. Yeah.
If that is the case, then
yeah,
that'll be another topic of conversation with Secretary Decker as well.
The $1 million that the governor had in the budget that was passed by the state, is that in the Commerce Department?
It is in the Commerce Department, but Senator Brown is the one who put it in the budget. He's the majority leader, and
Where's he from? You remember?
he's
Onslow.
from Jacksonville.
Oh, is that near the Marine base?
Go figure.
And he's the one that got the money put in the budget last year that we got the $125,000 from. But they're looking to the Military Affairs Commission for how to spend that money. So I'm not sure how far out on a limb Secretary Decker would be willing to go to spend it on her own, since it's Senator Brown's initiative.
We're getting short on time here because of the weather. Go back to your previous slide. I just have one request. Where you said Lee County is very active, but the fact that value that Lee County is not getting anywhere else. I would like for you guys to put together a list of what we've gotten, because I don't see very much that we've gotten. And that's one of the reasons we voted it down last time. So if you can do that, we'd be probably more inclined to help you get the funds that you need. But if all of these other counties, which are much bigger, to provide more funds, are gonna get the total consideration, then we would not be getting anything.
Well,
So
that-
if you
that's
could do that for
certainly-
us, I would appreciate it.
Certainly has not been the case. I know the,
That's the reason I want to list, because I'm not really seeing much.
understood,
Okay.
I'll get you that.
All right. Any more questions for?
No, you actually covered mine very well. Thank you very much. That's a nice tie you have on.
Well, thank you.
I have one somewhat related question that I get asked all the time from people that travel from Lee County into Cumberland County, as far as what the current deadline is for closing Bragg Boulevard. It keeps getting pushed back.
It keeps getting pushed back, and quite frankly, at this point, I don't know what they pushed it back to.
Right, no, I mean, that's, while I had you here, I thought maybe you might have an inside track so I could give them a better answer than just, I don't know. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in for.
And Mr. Chair, I was just going to offer that if there's any other support that we could provide in addition to the financial support, in terms of twisting arms, contacting legislators or whatever, if you'll let us know, we certainly, we know that we get some value out of the Fort Bragg Regional Alliance, and we know that we need to keep the alliance going. Hopefully, it'll be sustained without having to take local tax dollars to do it. But it would be great to sustain the alliance, because we know there's going to be another round of base realignment and closure, and when it happens, we want to be prepared. We want to be able to market our area for receiving as opposed to losing,
Right.
the head count. That's we want to be on the receiving end, not the losing end, and I think that's what's key. So let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Greg. See you Friday.
next presentation, I'm going to ask Jim to introduce our guest speaker.
Just very briefly, Robbie will introduce himself and tell you about his background. I do want to make a clarifying comment, though, because there were some public comments that were made early in the meeting, and I think there's some confusion out there. Robbie, I don't know how long back we started our conversation. It's been at least 6 or 8 months ago about trying to get you in here to do a presentation on education buildings.
Actually, it was last budget meeting.
Was it actually a year ago?
Yeah, a year
Okay,
ago.
so we've been talking about trying to bring his organization in here to learn about other alternatives other than taking on debt to build buildings. And so I don't know, there may be some confusion in the public out there, but we are certainly not opposed to looking at all the options that we have, and it's just been a while in the making. But
That was our discussion in this
Yeah.
budget meeting, is that we would look at all the options to see what would be the best and most cost effective for Lee County.
Sure.
To invest in buildings, so.
so, please introduce yourself and then be at it.
Okay, so I am Robbie Ferris. I'm the CEO of SFLA Architects and First Floor. That's our development company. With me tonight is George Thigpen. He's a retired school superintendent and worked in the community college, our higher education system for years. And we're really here tonight to talk about leased public facilities. Not just schools, but all public facilities. We're going to use an example, which is a school, because it happens to be the best leased public building in the country, and it's sitting an hour away from here. So it's a really great example, but I'm going to touch on other public buildings. Okay, so I thought we'd just in summary tell you a little bit about who we are. I know some of you know us, some of you don't know who we are. We talk about why lease energy positive facilities, and I'm going to tell you more about that. And then the success story, Sandy Grove Middle School over in Hope County, and then some next steps. We'll talk first about our experience. SFLA Architects has been designing schools in North Carolina for over 30 years. We've done over 1,000 educational projects. You can see the little stars. Actually, Lee County is right here. We've done projects all around Lee County, and I think I said earlier, maybe 150, probably 200 projects in the counties that surround Lee County. Some of these stars are like 10 stories high, 10 projects, 100 projects high. Our development company was started in 2000 to respond to the university's need for student housing. They had a tremendous growth in student housing, and they needed student housing economically, and they needed it fast. And the first project we did was over in Fayetteville, and we did lots of student housing. That model is morphed into other public facilities now. Here are some examples of some of the projects we've done. These are mostly traditional delivery projects, but I put them up here because I thought you might be familiar with them. You know, when the high school over in Guilford County burnt down, they asked us to come in and build a new high school and design it, permit it, and get it built in less than 2 years, and we did that. Pollard Middle over in Chatham County, your neighbor. Overhills High School over in Harnett County, again, your neighbor. Rocky Mount High School, we just completed that project. One of the most energy efficient high schools in the country. Very, very successful. Up in Boone and Watauga High School. Jack Britt High School, maybe been published more than any other high school in the country that I've ever seen. So we've done a lot of K-12 work. We've also done a lot of higher education at FTCC, the Harry Shaw Building, at Fayetteville State University, a new nursing building, Methodist University. We've done all the work at Methodist, I think, for the last 15, 20 years. A new nursing building that just opened over at Methodist, FSU, a student housing project, and at the community college, again, an administration building. Just to give you an example of what we have done over the years. Next, why lease public facilities? And as I get into this, I'm talking fast to be respectful of your time. Stop me if you have questions, okay? I thought we'd start with this quote by Milton Friedman, and I have to say that this quote becomes more and more powerful and meaningful to me every single day. Since we opened Sandy Grove Middle School, and we own that building and we lease it to them 5 months ago, I have learned more in 5 months than I've learned in my entire career about how to design and deliver public buildings. It's huge. When you are responsible for operating a building, paying the power bill, when that's you, your money, and you have to make decisions every day about how that building gets operated, it's a game changer. And I've built my career on traditional delivery projects, but I am so convinced that what we're talking about tonight, about leasing public facilities, is the right thing to do for the future. I am 100% convinced of that. And this quote, again, is, I think, very powerful. Okay, so just quickly, what are some of the advantages of leasing buildings? Number one, speed. We are in an environment right now when construction costs are going to be going up. They've already gone up a good bit. They're going to continue going up. Interest rates are going to go up. If we can deliver projects faster, that's real money saved. It's real money. Eliminates construction risk for the county. You know, a lot of county projects, whether it's a school, a courthouse, a jail, doesn't matter what, they come in over budget. This process eliminates that bid day risk. It also eliminates the risk of change orders. We take that risk on. We can manage it differently than a county can manage it. And I know because I manage it on both sides, traditional delivery and leased. So I understand the differences in how to manage risk. Reduces operating costs. These buildings that we're going to talk about tonight don't have an electric bill. There's no light bulb replacements. There's no HVAC maintenance costs. It's a game changer when it comes to operating costs. Improves the quality of the building. I'm going to show you examples of where we were able to upgrade the equipment in the building, and it's not because we want to do a fancier building. Actually, our buildings are very simple. We're upgrading the quality of equipment because it reduces our operating costs, improves. We don't have to spend as much money on maintenance. It's those sorts of things. You know, things like terrazzo floors, which seem to be long gone out of schools because of budgets. We're bringing back because it reduces operating costs. And extended warranties. We have a 35-year roof warranty on the school I'm going to show you. I don't know of another building with a 35-year roof warranty on it that I've ever done, traditional delivery. And then we can include furniture and technology and pots and pans and letterhead. We can include whatever you need in the lease. And this is a real issue for public entities, whether it's community colleges, schools, courthouses. Folks build buildings all the time, and for whatever reason, and we can spend a whole night talking about why these things don't get budgeted, but they open the building and they don't have money to equip it. And whether it's included in the lease or not, that needs to be thought about. And then lastly, and something that I've become so passionate about, this speeds the cycle of innovation. in the traditional delivery world, we come up with an idea, it takes 5 years to implement an idea. And that's with a good idea. With this, we've cut the cycle of innovation down to a year, less. We've done Sandy Grove, we're doing some more projects, we've got them under design right now. We've already taken everything that we've learned on a daily basis and we're incorporating it into the new buildings. And it's that fast, it's unbelievable. The next building we do is gonna be 30% better than Sandy Grove. We're figuring out ways to improve the quality of the building, but we're driving down the capital cost. We believe that within the next iteration of our buildings, our capital cost will be lower than the capital cost on a traditional building. Right now, they're about equal. We think it's going to be lower, and that's exciting. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about Sandy Grove Middle School now. This project, taking a while to come up. It started about 6 years ago before the recession. The school system came to us and they said, design us a school, make it as economical as you can possibly make it. We've done all Hope County's work for maybe 15 years. The last school we did for them, about 6 years ago, the payment on that building for them, it was a traditional project, between the utilities and the debt service was costing about $1.5 million a year. They said, we cannot afford $1.5 million a year. You've got to make it more economical. So we designed this building. Recession hit. They put it on hold. They called us back a couple years ago now, and they said, we have to have that building, but we can't spend $1.5 million a year. You have got to find a way to make this building possible for $400,000 a year. And I said, well, the only way to do that is for you to lease it, and we're going to have to get real creative. And I'm going to show you what we did. Now, we can't do that again, I don't think. Not quite that good. Okay. So this building is energy positive, and it's generating more energy than it consumes. It's designed to LEED Platinum standards. We don't have the plaque yet. They're evaluating it now. It's dramatically improved occupant student performance. It's a very high quality building built in 11 months on budget. Really, really exciting. The best project I've ever done in my career, out of the 1,000 projects that you saw. This is a floor plan of the building. You can see it's a very simple building. We just took that design, that original design, and we put all the high performance systems into it. It's not a fancy building and it doesn't need to be. They're so happy with it, they can't stand it. You can see the high performance systems in the building, ground source geothermal, LED lighting. It's a masonry building. It's got a very sophisticated set of systems in it, and of course solar panels on the roof. If this building had been a traditional building, over here on the left, it would have cost $53.5 million over 40 years. That's $21.5 million for capital. That's to build the building, that's for the land, the fees, the equipment, all the stuff in it, technology, furniture. $21.5 million is what it would have cost. The electrical bill would have been about $16 million over 40 years, and the interest cost would have been about $16 million. So it would have cost the county, traditional delivery, $53.5 million. We leased the building to them. The building will never have an electrical bill, so that's eliminated. That's $16 million saved. We actually got $4.2 million in tax credits, a combination of solar tax credits and job creation tax credits. A big job, because this is in a really low health district.
Tier 3 county.
Yeah, it was there were all sorts of criteria this particular agency used, but we got a lot of job creation tax credits. Actually in Sandy Grove, and we don't have it on here, but we eliminated the interest cost completely. And we actually earned about $1 million on the borrowing. And we did that because there was some TARP money kind of left over, and we got it allocated over here, and it was really, really exciting because we had no interest costs. So, but if you had interest cost, which we would on a project moving forward, the difference would be $53.5 million to $33 million. So you can see a savings of over 30%, and that's a really good thing when you consider all of the qualitative upgrades that we've done. I want to take a minute now to show you the building dashboard. Because people say, is this thing really generating more power than it's consuming? And we say yes. This is real time
I just pulled up the internet, and I'll move around. I'll do it real quick since we don't have time, but this is actually today. It was kind of a cloudy day. You can see we used 1,600 kilowatt hours, and we've generated 1,600. So it was about even today. I can pull up yesterday.
Is Duke gonna pay you that extra?
Well, it's in a co-op service area, and they do. We receive a check. You can see I can click on this and pull up yesterday. Yesterday was, I think, a little bit, wasn't quite as cloudy because we didn't have the storm coming in. So it's, you can see we used 1,700 and we produced 2,100. So we had a little net gain yesterday. We can pull up year to date. It's really exciting for the students. They have all sorts of learning tools. We've actually written curriculum around the building, 10 hours of curriculum in each class. Do we have any educators on the board? Retired educators? Okay. So really, really exciting. We have, we can see, the students can see where the building's using electricity. They compete against, the three wings compete against each other. It's really exciting. These kids are going home telling their parents to turn the lights off. This is good stuff. I'm serious too, and you'll see in just a minute what I'm talking about. I think I can close this without closing the actual presentation. And then we're going to go to a, well, I'm not sure what's going on here. No, I didn't mean to do that. I'm messing up, and I know y'all's time's valuable right now.
Let me ask you a question while you're bringing that up, because I know you can do multitasking.
Yeah.
Architect costs, let's say we wanted a building similar to what you have here, and it fit all of our needs. Maybe, expansion, growth, looks, the whole work. Is there a reduced architect cost to you in that sense, since you already have buildings that are approved architecturally?
If we use a prototype, that does reduce the cost. Obviously, there's significantly more engineering in these buildings than a traditional building. We really focus on the total cost of ownership because you could look at any one component of this building. For instance, if you just look at the solar panels, you'd say, do we really need to spend money on solar panels? Do you really need to spend money on LED lighting? But what we look at is the total cost of ownership. And if we can deliver this high-performance building for the same price as a traditional building, capital cost, and we don't have a power bill, we consider that a good deal. I apologize for having to go back through this. Actually, now that this is the video that I wanted to show you. So this is where we're at. I'm going to take a minute to show you a video. This was on the news. TV station came out and did a story on the school, and I think it really sums up a lot of the qualitative value of this
Right when you
project.
arrive at Sandy Grove Middle School, it's obvious. This isn't your ordinary school. It's a STEM building, and students will be able to use the building to learn. Large solar panels sit outside as well as cover the roof of the school, saving energy and money. The school returns more energy than it consumes and will save Polk County Schools nearly $35 million in the next 40 years, $16 million in energy costs alone. Go inside the building and the green technology and innovation continues. This is called the dashboard. It monitors how much energy is used and produced, as well as water consumption, piquing students' interest and expanding their minds.
Have a real world experience where they can touch screens and get moment to moment data about the energy that this building uses.
And every classroom is equipped with a smart board for students and teachers to use. Just one example of how this school will prepare these students for the digital age and hopefully share their going green education with others.
This building is for the future. It's preparing them to ensure that you can see outside of the school, living in a safe green environment. Not just at school, but at home as well, that they can take what they're learning here at the building and take it home and teach their parents and siblings how to conserve energy. It makes them aware that their day-to-day existence is going to influence the future. It makes them significant because they are first.
going green and moving forward. In Hope County, Amanda Weber, News 14 Carolina.
Okay, so just some next steps. This really was intended to be all about leasing public buildings in general, not just schools, even though the example was a school. So what would you do if you wanted to lease a school? Well, to begin with, you have to select a developer. And if it's anything other than a school, you have to go through an RFQ process in accordance with this House Bill 857 that was passed last session. Okay, so that kind of cleaned a lot of things up. There are nuances for every type of building, be it a jail, a courthouse, a community college building. If there's a school, if it's a school, you don't have to go through the RFQ process. You can just select a developer because you're utilizing a different statute if it's a school. Okay, then you would enter into a pre-development agreement, which is a very short agreement, hopefully, Mr. Attorney. It would be relatively short. And it kind of says we want to go down this road together. It's not a binding commitment. There may be some shared risk, maybe some money that both entities put into the pot to kind of get us going. We would then prepare construction documents based on that pre-development agreement, meet with the local government commission, prepare all the legal lease documents and everything. And then once all of that is done, the county commissioners, of course, would have to approve the project, the local government commission, all of the review agencies, and then you could execute the lease. So you really, with all public buildings, you have to go through local government commission review and approval. You still have to go to the Department of Insurance and all those regulatory agencies. Depending on the term of the lease, you might even have to go through state construction for community college buildings. Again, nuances. And then, of course, once the lease is signed, you can start construction.
One quick question, just for clarification on my part. Now, when you say school, you were saying K-12 and community colleges are different?
They are different.
Okay, so.
And
okay.
courthouses are different, and jails are different,
Okay.
and dog kennels are different.
So the community college would need the RFP?
You do have to do the RFQ for the community college.
Okay, thank you.
Do you own the property that the building is on?
Generally, no. We would generally do a ground lease. So we would lease that either from the county or from the school district. And then we would lease the building and the land back to the entity that's leasing it, be it the county or the school district.
So is that the way you did it in Hope County?
It is.
How long is the land lease in
The
Hope?
land lease in Hope County is a 60-year land lease.
All right.
The Hope County structure is probably slightly different than what you would do, and the reason is because of the QSCAB money that we utilized.
Mhm.
The borrowing was a little bit different than what we'd probably do, and so the terms would likely be different.
And so it's a 40-year lease with the county or with the Board of Education?
No, in that case, we leased the land from the county,
Okay.
and we leased the building to the Board of Education.
And so the reason it goes to LGC is because it becomes part of the county's debt structure?
No, because the local government commission, the statutes, all the statutes that relate to leasing, I believe all of them, say that if the lease is more than 3 years, you have to go to the local government commission. So you could go out and lease a building, for 2.5 years in downtown or whatever is the county. You wouldn't have to go to the local government commission. If you lease a building more than 3 years, you have to go to them for approval.
Is there an agreement between the county and the Board of Education?
There could be, there doesn't need to be.
If I'm the Board of Education and I don't control the tax rate, I certainly would want an agreement with the county to make sure that I'm going to get that lease payment every year.
Well, that actually is, that's a requirement of the statute, of the school statute. Now, if it's a community college, of course, it's different because the county commissioners may be the one signing the lease, or like if it's a jail, the county commissioners would be the one signing the lease. So you don't need that authority. You don't have the non-appropriation clause like you would with a COPS issue or a lob. Have you done COPS issues or lobs here?
Yes.
This is different than that. Similar in some ways, but different than that from an appropriation standpoint.
Robbie, from your purpose, and obviously you want these things to be perpetual leases, but for your purpose, what's the minimum term of the lease that you could visualize would be acceptable?
Well, in making the lease payment reasonable, you know, I can't imagine going less than 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, you might find there might be a circumstance where that would make sense, but I can't imagine it would. And of course, we're providing the public entity an option to purchase, and you know, we want this is really a true partnership. It's a collaboration. And again, I would encourage you to talk to the superintendent over in Hope County,
Oh, yeah.
or some of the commissioners in Hope County. Commissioner Hunt they kind of assigned one commissioner to make sure one commissioner knew every detail about the project. And so Commissioner Hunt was the one that was assigned to it, and he ended up knowing everything about it.
Yeah, the reason I asked was not necessarily with regard to K-12 educational facilities, but for other government facilities, because there are occasions where you have space requirements and that may not be there 7, 10, 15 years later. And, you know, encumbering the county beyond, you know, the minimum essential lease term, it may be a factor in deciding whether you're going to build or renovate or lease. So
That's an excellent point. Probably, when I said that, I was thinking like community colleges or schools.
Right.
For other things, yeah, I think a shorter term might be doable.
Okay.
Might make sense.
And that sort of dovetailing with what Jim just said, have you had a circumstance where you have a leased facility and, you know, 10 or 15 years have gone by and they need more space? Would you amend the lease and add on? Have you done that yet?
We haven't done that. And just sort of the history is, in the university system, when we started this endeavor of leasing these public buildings to the university system, they very quickly started buying them within a year or two.
Like at Methodist?
Well, not even at Methodist. Methodist is a private university. Okay, like at Fayetteville State.
Right.
We did a project there and they bought it within 2 years. And we've done projects at universities around the state and they buy them. And they use this as a mechanism. If you think building a county public building is complicated, a state public building is like twice as complicated and takes twice as long. So what they did was they used this as a mechanism to get the buildings quickly so that they could save money on the inflation, because we were in inflationary periods like we are today.
Right.
And then what they would do is, after we finished the building, a year or two later, they go out and issue debt and they actually bought them from us. And that made sense for them. I think I've lost track of the question.
No, just that, would you consider expanding onto a building that you know? And,
Yeah, the lease has language. The lease has language where if you want to, we can add on to it, we can do anything to it. In fact, you could add on to it if it was like a small expense, like a couple $100,000, and you wanted to just do it, you could do it. The rent doesn't change, nothing changes. If it's a large, like a big addition, we add on to it, we amend the lease, increase the rent, or increase the term of the lease.
Which we'd have no problem with, right?
Well, yeah, I was just curious if you had done that yet, you know, because we hope to grow in the county rather than, yeah. Okay.
Mr. Ferris, I just want to set the record straight on behalf of the manager and the chairman. We've been sitting in meetings with the Board of Education, chairman and co-chair, as well as the superintendent. I do recall a discussion, and this is for the public comment section. We did have comments about building a new building, and the comments we made were, we're not incurring any more debt. And that was the comment we made. So the lease issue, we weren't privy to, so somebody got their information lines crossed, but thank you for the presentation.
In fact, that's the reason we asked you to come, because we're very interested in not taking on more debt, but very interested in having the capacity to grow to meet our needs, our educational needs in particular. And that if we can do that without taking on more debt, that's certainly on the table. And we've been in line with that since I've been on the board. So.
Can you do all the upkeep to these buildings too? That's another expense. Is that under construction savings or?
When we can, and just for clarification, we can do anything you would like us to do in terms of upkeep. Like in Hope County, we maintain the HVAC system and solar panels and the backup generation, and the school district chose to maintain everything else.
Keep the lease a little lower?
Yeah, to keep the lease payment lower. So we can do as much or as little as you like. We actually, really, really prefer maintaining the mechanical system, because what we're learning is that when the public entity, and this isn't being critical of anyone, but it's just the system, when the public entity takes over maintaining that mechanical system, there's so many tweaks that have to be done. And what we're learning is that it's not just about commissioning. We commission Sandy Grove Middle School. We have people every day tweaking that building to get it to perform better. And I'm not kidding when I say every day. Every single day I get a phone call from somebody asking if they can do this or that to the building. So I would really encourage anyone, any public entity, to allow us to maintain those critical systems, at least for the first 5 to 7 years.
Jimmy, vandalization problems? Vandalizing?
We haven't.
No? Good. I'm surprised.
So you'd be their first suspect.
Yeah.
Anything happens.
Where are you located? I didn't see that in the.
We have an office in Fayetteville. We have one in Raleigh, one in Charlotte, and the development company in Winston-Salem. So 4 offices in North Carolina.
Thanks for doing business in North Carolina. Love that here too.
I'm in Raleigh.
Well,
Any other questions for Mr. Mayor?
yeah, Medley County, yes, here.
We really appreciate you coming and bringing your presentation to us.
Thank you.
It's a learning for us, and we're looking for the best way to serve the public at, the least amount of cost to our public. So we appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm gonna say at 5 minutes after 8 return, we'll take a break.
Did you by chance had an opportunity to do this over in Wake County?
No, they're not.
They got a bunch of buildings to build.
They're not doing this in Wake County. I don't think they decided what they're doing.
I agree.
Get 30 buildings at one time.
I'm serious.
It's a big building going on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
page.
Chairman Cards, members of the board, in your package, you have two contracts for non-emergency Medicaid transportation. So I gotta give you a quick history lesson, just to remember that.
We don't need a history lesson,
Well,
just
no,
make a nice synopsis.
no, what it is, the federal requirements require us to actually authorize and, arrange and pay for non-emergency Medicaid transportation. And that's DSS's responsibility. So we do that. And so it's one of those things where, we have the cost, but there's a 100% match on it. So if I spend $175,000, then I get $175,000 back in the reimbursement process. All right, and in doing that, one of the things that the feds require us to do is to determine the least expensive, because that's all Medicaid will participate in, is the least expensive. So what we had was, we had 3 vendors that had expressed interest in providing non-emergency Medicaid transportation. At the time I had to do the abstract, submit those contracts to, only 2 of the providers had provided all the information that they needed to provide so that we could actually enter into a contract with them effective February 1. That was Colts and Fleming.
Who was the third?
The Wolford House have not provided everything that they need to.
Where are they from, here?
Wolford House originated kind of like Virginia, something like that.
Maryland.
And then Maryland, yeah. And then they have some other space in Raleigh as well. And
I think I'm familiar with what you're talking
okay. All right, so what we have to do is we have to actually take a look at each one of the trips, evaluate, what's the least expensive. We have to look at if it can meet the needs of the client. And the best example of that would be if they require a lift van, then we can only look at those vendors that can provide a lift van and determine, which is cheaper between the two. As far as the budget impact is concerned, I budgeted $200,000 this year, spent $175,000 last year, factored in, some increase in the cost, factored in some increase in the number of eligible individuals. So just about the only thing right now that can make a difference would be if we really just had a landslide on the Medicaid eligibles or something like that. But if it were to happen, whatever I spend, I get, that amount back as well.
So you're saying that there is no local tax or no local match, and we should get 100% cost recovery?
We do get 100% back. And my board was interested in exactly what these vendors had to provide. So I include that in your package, should be probably on page 30.
Mm-hmm.
But just quickly, they have to carry sufficient insurance on the vehicles. They have to ensure that all drivers are properly licensed. Ensure all vehicles used to transport clients have valid state registration. They have to participate in random drug and alcohol testing on the drivers. They've had to perform criminal background checks on the drivers, perform driving record checks. So these are all the things that they have to provide, and we have to verify all those things.
Who conducts the test on drugs for them?
Who do you get yours through?
We use the county occupational therapy across the road, whatever it's called. And I think Fleming uses the same ones.
They do in the, where you probably do some of the things through the sheriff's department. Some of their background checks is to the police department.
Ours
we've
are all
got
to
some
the
of that
HR department.
information. Now, should the third vendor provide the information that they need to, then that contract would come to you at a later date.
Let me ask you this question: how do you broker who gets the trip between Colts and Fleming?
All right, whichever's the cheapest method.
So basically, Colts has a certain fleet, and then Fleming has a certain fleet, mostly smaller vehicles or whatever. If Fleming can provide the round trip cheaper than Colts can, then Fleming gets that particular trip. And if based on the needs of the individual, that Colts has a more appropriate method of transportation cheaper.
Like a lift van or something like that.
Right.
And then, as I understand, Colts doesn't operate on Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, and then, that is true, because if it's late evenings,
Right.
we use the cab company. Some of the weekend, especially the dialysis, patients, we use them, them as well. We've had to use them for some of the out-of-town trips when, say the surgeons were, busy up until 2 or 3 o'clock or something like that, and we had to have that particular individual seen later in the afternoon.
And when you presented at the social services board, you actually had that broken out for each one, and the mileage for each day. Actually, it's
We have it,
it's actually on page 45 and 46. But you had it broken out for all three at that time, so it was pretty well. There wasn't any guesswork on what it was going to cost.
It is, we have round trip prices, and, for Chapel Hill, for Durham. Colts does not do First Health, as I remember, right? Are you doing any First Health now?
We haven't been, but that was in our contract, that if it
Okay.
was necessary and we could be cost efficient, we would run it.
Okay.
And so, just, where they're going, what the mileage is from the home. We actually, when we take the application on the individual, we have to use MapQuest to determine what it is from their door to wherever they're going to.
Okay.
And the other things we have to do is just verify that one, they're a Medicaid recipient, two, that they're going for Medicaid service,
Yeah, Medicaid eligible.
and that individual that they're going to is a qualified Medicaid provider. So I only have two
Any other questions
contracts.
for Brenda? I think we had a motion, or?
I move to approve.
Okay, and any other discussion, if not? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, consider for bid for digital trunking system for emergency management. Zero.
Chairman Parks and Board of Commissioners, before you have our proposal, the bid, state contract pricing for a UHF trunking system. The system will be used by Colts, the Sheriff's Department, and General Services, and it will complete the build-out of our radio system for the county, similar to what we did in the previous budget year. The low bid came in at $53,413.25, and it was state contract pricing through Fleet Connect from here in Sanford. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I have one question. What, if any, interoperability issues do we have with the city?
We all operate on a main dispatch channel for fire. We also still will operate on analog channels for dispatch for both Sheriff's Department and Police Department, so they can still communicate with each other. And then we do have the capability to patch those channels together through our mobile command post should we have some large-scale incident and they need to be able to use as operational channels.
All right.
So we still have the full ability to talk with each other.
All right.
I move to approve.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, consider acceptance of state revenue for Healthy Communities Program, Mr. Jones.
Good evening. Chairman Parks, Board of Commissioners. Last month I was here for this same project. We received some funds, and it was decided that we'd go to the 4-H community. That chunk of money for the Healthy Communities or Health Promotion Program had a lot of flexibility. This is the second revision of our addendum from the state for this particular program, and these funds are supposed to be used for training, in particular webinar trainings that are coming up that will help them to look at some new changes in the chronic disease and injury prevention and care concepts that they're trying to address with this program. So this amount is actually the most we've gotten from them this year is $6,789. And when it first came up, I was thinking, we don't need $6,000 to have one or two of our staff attend some webinars. I don't understand this, but I got to thinking about it. They give each county the same amount of money, and they have to provide for training. I mean, they're allowing us to get money for training, and the larger counties, this might cover what they, if they have a staff of 15 or 20, you know, maybe they need this much money to get this training done. Since all the counties get the same, we certainly won't use this much for attending some webinars, but they're allowing us to use it for other things once that's done. And it's the same use of funds that they allow in the original agreement addendum.
So you're saying that we don't need $6,789 for training, but that you do have some authority to redirect those funds as long as they remain in health promotion and awareness?
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure we can find ways of using those funds for health promotion, right?
Right. The agreement addendum specifies what we can use these types of funds for. And the only, well, we could even possibly buy, say, equipment like this right here, but we have to get permission for furniture or electronic equipment. But healthy activities and healthy eating is what they're focusing on, reducing chronic disease, diabetes, obesity, things like that. So we would target the funds, any leftover funds towards that.
That would be something your board would approve?
Yes,
if they felt that was...
they've already approved this.
Okay, well, I'm moving to approve.
Okay, any further discussion?
Just a quick question. How many people are designated as the healthy community staff?
Here, we
Yeah.
have one.
Just one?
And actually, it's a vacant position right now, but that person starts next week, the replacement. So.
Okay.
Can you cross-train anybody?
Yes, we have 2 health promotions employees at the health department, so they would both be participating in this.
Now, the webinar, is it gonna be here? I mean, they can do it here, right?
I believe so. Webinars generally,
Yeah,
you
do you
get on
have
the
it in-
computer and
Okay.
you have a phone turned on so that you can ask questions.
Okay.
So,
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, consider Board of Education request for hiring of additional school resource officers. Mr. Crumpet.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to hand out a couple of more budget sheets, financial sheets to you to discuss, and asking Ms. Minter to come to the podium so we can discuss the budget impacts of the SRO request. The Board of Education, in a letter dated to us January 7th, has unanimously asked that we look into hiring 7 additional SROs. 3 would be grant-funded positions. These are from the grant that this board has discussed previously. That's through the legislature. It's a 2-year grant. And the additional 4 would receive some funding through the at-risk program. On the sheet I just handed out, you know, based on some of the questions, this is the 5-column sheet that shows, you know, the current budget, the projected expenditures within that budget, what the impact would be of the additional 3 SROs for the remainder of this fiscal year, and the addition of the 4 SROs, you know, for the total impact to the county if we were to approve tonight and assume that this is 5 months.
That's correct. There is a mistake on that spreadsheet. I caught after I got here. I changed a number right before we left, and I did not catch my formula. Under the projected expense, the total cost, instead of being 200 and some thousand, is $530,785.
Which line is that again?
42.
Right. On the projected expense. Yeah, I kept looking at it going, how did that happen? And I knew it didn't match back to what I had earlier. So the total on the right is correct. But I did want to point out to you that should be $530,785.
So the 807 does take it in?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's under word, Lisa?
The projected expense, the total cost there is wrong, and that adjusts the potential cost to the county also. So the potential cost to the county for the current budget and expenses before you take into account anything else right now would be $236,359. There, the bottom number in that column.
And what was the total cost, number 5?
$530,785. And the bottom line number would be 236,359 for potential cost to the county. So I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to clarify that.
Is
before
that
people
where that
start looking.
52,000 is, or?
Yes, sir.
All right, give me that number again.
236,359.
Now, that's for the 3 or that's for the 7 they're requesting?
There's actually, two different columns there, Mr. Chairman. There's one, after the projected expenditures, you have the additional 3 SROs in one column and the additional 4 SROs. And as you go down through the expenses, the discussions we've had with the Sheriff's Department is that they can take on the 3 grant-funded positions and be able to use existing funding and existing equipment to outfit those 3. But once we add the 4, then they begin to request additional vehicles, additional capital, additional uniform money, additional gas and oil money, and additional maintenance, for vehicles. So, it's quite a bit bigger for the additional 4 than the 3.
Mr. Chairman, I'm certainly the biggest proponent that I know of for school safety. But I am completely buffaloed by this. I have lost track, and I hopefully I'm the only one, but I've lost track of what we've already funded versus what grant is going to provide versus what at-risk will provide versus how much more we're paying for out of our pocket. It's just a very confusing set of arrangements. What I would like to see is Sheriff Carter's proposal that says this is everything we got to have. And then very neatly break down, what's already in the budget versus what's being requested, and how much of that the county taxpayers are going to pay for, as opposed to what's in a grant versus what at-risk money is going to pay for. All of that's lost on me in looking at these spreadsheets. I can't see that.
Okay, on the small sheet there, is that the individual?
Right. What I tried to do here on this schedule is show you what the first year cost of a single SRO is for a full year if we did a 10-month pay versus a 12-month. And the first year is a higher number because you've got to equip them. You've
Right.
got to get the bulletproof vest and the computer and the gun and all that stuff and a car. So that's the first column, and there's a 10-month, and then the 10-month, the second year, it's taking it the next year to see kind of what the ongoing operating costs are for you. And then we did a 12-month also.
Because if they're working for the sheriff, they'll work for 12 months out of the year. So you got to spread that over 12 months as opposed to 10.
Doesn't have to work 12 months.
Oh, it doesn't.
When we did the SROs, when the control went from the Board of Education to the Sheriff's Department, that was the Sheriff's Department's preference, correct?
Yes, he
That they
took the
wanted 12
first.
employees.
That's right. He
Yeah,
took those first.
Right.
Using
Using during the summer, right?
He took the first 7 positions, and then the 2 we added,
Right.
and made them 12-month employees. If you funded all of these, you're talking about 16 folks that for 2 months, not real sure what's. I mean, you have a pretty big number, and that'd be a question you have to ask the sheriff as to what you're going to do with those people for the summer.
I mean, he needs to come up with a decent plan that makes a lot of operational sense, as opposed to just having folks sitting around twiddling thumbs or whatever.
Right, but I mean, I completely agree. But, if there would be plans on the table, like, we've all had a lot of discussions about the balance in the county
Sure.
lately, if they could
Yeah, you can put them
be
on
used
a
during
crime control
community-
task force, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
well, or just, doing public outreach during the summer to young people and sort of creating a program or something that wouldn't cost any additional money. But I agree, these are total costs, but what you're saying
Yeah, see, I don't-
we've got grant funding, then we've got at-risk.
It's one thing to
then we've
know
got-
what the total cost of
Exactly.
ownership is for these SROs. It's another thing if you can say, okay, because I don't see a clear commitment by the school board here to say this is how much we're going to kick in. I don't see that here.
It's right here.
Yes, it's down.
It's-
All right, show me what that number is.
Okay, that's not on that sheet.
Right,
That's
Yeah,
this
if you look
sheet.
at the one that handed out.
If you go down to the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
that $63,063 that they provide to us is if you divide that by 5, you get down to what's the monthly figure?
$13,000?
Yeah,
It's-
$13,000 a
For
month
SRO?
of at-risk money
Well, that's per month.
per month. It
Right,
works out
it's-
to $151,000 that they would give us for
For a
the
year. It's
4 additional positions.
It's approximately 38,000, I don't remember the number exactly, but I'm thinking 38,700 and some change per officer for a year.
Okay.
So I took that, figured out what it would be per month, because you only know, we were trying, the first spreadsheet that was in your package, understand, I basically was doing a year. Took what we currently had budgeted for a year and did a full year for each the others. We came back after some discussions that Mr. Crumpton had and I think Mr. Parks had, and asked me to try to narrow it down and get it more precise.
All right.
So the projected expenses were done by taking what we currently have spent, going through and figuring out the remaining months of remaining pay periods to get the salaries and fringes. And then I reviewed the expense line items and even discussed them with Mr. Chief Butler to say, are we in line? Because some things he's not spent money in, but I still show some expenditure because it's going to happen one way or the other. If it's not spent in those line items, it's going to get moved. If you go down to the capital area, you can see they're over budget already. So some of this money and some of the other line items is going to have to get moved around. And then I went and said, okay, if I take the additional 3 SROs per the grant as 12-month employees, if we hired them February 1st, now they're not going to hit the schools February 1st because they've got to go through training and all, but they'd be on our payroll for 5 months. So that's what the additional 3 SROs cost. And then I said, okay, if it's a $120,000 grant divided by 12 months, that's $10,000 a month. I have not seen the grant yet. I don't know how it's structured. I don't know if we can just draw down what we spend every month until it's gone. But until I could determine that, I just said, okay, we'll take $10,000 a month. So that's the $50,000 that you see in that column. Then the additional 4 SROs, again, I took the same scenario. We've hired them February 1st. You're going to have, I see Mr. Crumpton has already explained, you're going to have more expenses for outfitting and all because they cannot do the 4 additional. And then I took the amount that they've said for at-risk funding and subtracted that out. So you're looking at a potential county cost on the 3 SROs of $15,017. But what you're seeing, when we originally did the budget, you were looking at maybe $348,000 in cost. Okay? Now you're looking at $236,000. Some of that differential is going to get used to cover those 3 SROs and outfit them. Okay, is what they're doing. So the actual cost of those 3 SROs is really more than $15,000 to the county.
All right.
Okay, but I can't tell you that because I don't know exactly where they're planning on moving stuff. The potential cost to the county of the 4 additional SROs for this fiscal year, best case scenario that I can tell from what I've got, is $149,000.
So your presumption is that we want to go ahead and execute on the SROs this fiscal year to take advantage of available school funding that DPI has made available. Is that the presumption? Do we want to go ahead and action that for this year?
No,
Or
this is funding that your local Board of Education is making available. DPI has nothing to do with this.
but the grant that we're talking about, when does that kick in? When does the DPI grant kick in?
They have already been approved for that and can draw down funds immediately.
Okay, so that's for this fiscal year that we're in.
Yes.
Okay. See, I thought that started June or July 1.
So the superintendent told me that it started as soon as it was awarded, that they could start drawing it down.
Based on his letter, that's what they want to use the money for.
So let me ask you this, the at-risk money they didn't transfer with the original package of SROs. Now they're kicking that in as well?
No, sir.
They're not. So that,
Only-
I thought that it was inferred in this letter that we got, that the at-risk money would be turned over.
How much is that money?
That's the approximate third. That's the 100. Well, for a full year, it would be approximately 151,000. For the 5 months, we're looking at 63,000. That is all they're willing to transfer to us. And my understanding is it only comes if we bring on the 4 additional SROs. If we don't bring on any those 4 additional SROs, we will not get that funding.
And I really think that on the SROs that are outside the grant, having an interlocal agreement at this time to lay out the funding, because there's already a memorandum of understanding on how the operations occur between the sheriff and the Board of Education.
Did they get that signed finally?
Yes, sir. But, our interest is the financial aspect and how long they're going to commit these at-risk funds for. And my recommend.
What do they get a year for at-risk?
It's 251. Is that?
Let's say.
I think it's-
Which I might add was, I think,
it was 241.
exclusively used to fund SROs when they owned them, yeah.
I want to say it was 241 on my old schedule.
But it's your understanding.
It's in the 250.
It's your understanding, if we did the full enchilada on SROs, that they would transfer all the at-risk money?
That is not.
They're
my
not,
understanding.
it's not.
And the other thing that concerns me a little bit, you know, again, I think we need to sit down and really make sure we've got a complete understanding
Yeah.
between our board, the sheriff,
Got
and the
it.
Board of Education. But, you know, in Superintendent Bryant's opening paragraph to the letter, you know, it's in black and white, but, you know, they want to use the money to hire 4 additional 10-month SROs. So, you know, then you've got the sheriff wanting them at 12 months and the school saying 10 months,
So, Mr. Chairman, was
you know.
this discussed at the Board of Education meeting?
Yes.
It was. Then they made the public aware that they're willingly withholding money that could be used to protect schools?
No, they didn't say it.
They didn't say that. Okay, so the schools, let me understand, the schools are withholding
Be careful,
money?
they may be using it for other purposes.
Oh, are they?
Maybe to protect the schools.
Oh, are they? Okay, so they're not doing SROs, but what are they doing to protect schools with that money?
That's a question you can ask.
Okay, so we need to get that question undocumented. I mean, the public needs to be
In
aware.
all honesty, like when we had this argument before, is, you know, when the legislature said that we could take the SROs from the schools, and then there was no language as far as the funding.
Yeah, that got pulled. That language got pulled,
Well,
yeah.
but, yeah, you know, so as long as, if they're hiring more teachers' assistants, and I agree, that's a good question as to what they're doing for the at-risk money.
I mean, they were
There's
protecting
lots.
schools with it before, but now they're not protecting schools as far as I
No,
understand.
I mean, you know, when I'm in a classroom, if it's me with 30 elementary students by
Mhm.
myself, or me with an assistant with 30 elementary students, they're safer.
So
with
you've got
that
an armed
assistant.
assistant as a TA in your, is that what you're doing?
That would be the cheapest way to do it.
Arm your assistants.
Not getting into that debate, but I mean, you know, there's lots of.
Okay,
ways
well,
to
I got my
work.
point made.
There's lots of ways to
I made my
work
point.
with
I
schools.
made my point.
Yes.
Okay, we can take this on.
Mr. Chair, let me ask you, let me ask you
Go ahead.
a couple of quick questions. You know, it would seem to me that this board would want to know from the sheriff what his expectations are.
Right.
I want to know from the county manager and the finance director what ours ought to be.
Yeah.
What portion of the monies do, obviously, I'd be asking for all of it. I don't mind telling them, I'm on record, I want all the money. But on a serious note, we have to look after our own budget as well as their budgets. So let's hear, I would want to hear from our own staff, here's the layout that we need to have to make this work for us. And the sheriff can present something along those lines. And you know, and if he, I'm sure he wants all the people he can get, and I'm fine with that. But let's get those two things in order, and then find out from the school board exactly what they're doing with the 251 before we
And
lock
we-
horns.
Right, but we need to keep in mind though that, you know, to be fair, if we've got SROs in most of our schools, we need to have them in all of our schools.
I'm totally with you. I think we're unanimous on that. We would like to see every school protected.
Right.
I just want to know how the money is being used. I don't have any idea that they're not doing the right thing, but just lay it out so that we can see what is going on. And then all three of us can make a decision.
Right.
We have an asterisk down here also that says they're willing to negotiate, so once we find all this out, then we can work on it.
So, Judy and
That's the only way you get our attention.
the county manager and representatives from our board and the Board of Education meeting the sheriff. Is that what you-
What was your question?
Do you want to just make it an item at the joint meeting?
Yeah.
Want them to do that?
Invite the sheriff.
And invite the
And invite
sheriff.
the sheriff, yes.
And
Why
the
don't you get it in print before the
Oh,
joint meeting?
that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what our staff.
Okay, well, fine.
So if we want to make a motion to do that, that's fine, but I think John and Lisa already know what we want, so.
I want to see what we want,
I think we.
and I'd like to see what the sheriff wants.
Right.
and what the school board has done before the joint meeting.
Okay, so the recommendation was to approve the budget amendment, so, no, that's.
Well, it was an interlocal agreement.
I make a
That too.
motion to table it until after the meeting.
I don't think you want to table. I think maybe the motion should be that, you know, you ask staff to meet with the sheriff and superintendent
Same request I
to
made.
develop an agreement
That's all.
that can be presented at the joint meeting.
Correct.
Right, yes, that.
There you go.
And then we can get with
That
the,
one. That one.
we'll get with legal staff and try to, you know, put something together that's simple and put all the
Okay, you can write
budgetary.
that up for Gail, right? Somebody.
I don't know.
No, we got it.
It's on the video, so, all right.
All right, so you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous?
You know, if you're confused, call me.
Hey, you know, the one other question that needs to be added to the inquiry to the schools is, are there any educational facilities beside the Heinz Building that we're gonna have, I should say, any facilities in which we have K-12 education being provided, which would include Warren Williams, that sort of thing? If we've got anything that's going on that's not gonna be protected.
Early college, is that covered by the
I think,
college?
you know,
It's covered by the
campus
college's
board.
security.
Right, but
You've got Floyd Knight too.
and that's what I was questioning. I want to make sure, is Floyd Knight covered? Is the Warren Williams? And
I think when we counted the 16 the other day, when I was on the phone with Chief Butler, the 16 would cover everything.
okay,
But I'll verify that.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not saying, well, this one person's going to cover 3 facilities or whatever, like we were before.
Right.
The other thing we ought to keep in mind is we do have one year-round school with Tramway as well, so we need to make sure that we've addressed that if we're doing any of these 10-month specials, that we've got Tramway addressed.
Yeah, no, this seems to be an automatic 12 months.
It is, it has to be a 12-month.
Right.
So,
Which everybody you have on staff right now is on as a 12-month employee.
right, okay, good, okay.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
I'm up for the next thing too,
Go ahead.
I believe. Okay, you have the budget amendment. It's on page 80 in your package. Just to run down for you real quick. We're appropriating $10,357 in additional funds for health promotion and family planning. Those are the funds that you've approved at the last couple of meetings. So we're putting those officially in the budget. We're rolling over $19,177 in the administration budget to cover the EDC strategic plan. We had thought that would be finished prior to June 30th. When it rolled on into this year, we need to roll those monies over to cover those costs. Social Services has received an additional allocation for low-income energy assistance in the amount of $524. There is no county match to that. And then you'll see some miscellaneous moving of funds between departments there to cover various insurance costs. We have had to use $10,000 that we had reserved for liability insurance, and I had to go in and take $9,330 from the reserve for workman's comp that we had not touched to cover our cost of our various insurance for vehicles, liability, and other properties. So that's what that budget amendment covers.
Move to approve.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
When they do the fund for heating costs for eligible clients, do they give the money directly to the client, or do they pay the bill?
Most of the times we're paying the bill.
Okay.
I do not believe there's very many occasions that we pay a client directly on that one.
Any other questions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay.
Get to stay again.
You're up again.
Okay, you have before you the tentative budget calendar for fiscal year 2014-2015. As usual, this is subject to change at any time as we move through the process. A couple of key points I'll point out to you on that. On page 82, February 21st is the date y'all have selected to do your budget kickoff session. That'll be from 9 to 2 here in the Gordon Wicker Room. Other important dates for you from there is the intention is for Mr. Crumpton to distribute his budget message to you on April 30th for an official presentation at the first meeting in May, which would be May 5th. You would have from then until potentially June 1st for your review of the budget and meetings. We have tentatively scheduled a work session on May 12th, and then our goal is to adopt the budget the first meeting in June, which would be June 2nd.
So the question on the May 6th to June 1 window, are you going to put together a schedule, a draft schedule, or do you want us to suggest it to you?
It's up to y'all, you know.
I think the
If
year
you wanna-
before we did it, this last year you did it. You want to just stay with that convention?
If
All
the
right.
board wants to
All right.
go through every department again.
Just a note on April 30th, the Lee County Stakeholders Breakfast for the Sand Hills will be that morning.
Which one's that?
That's just when we get the vote.
Right, that's just the date that we distribute the agenda package.
We don't meet,
Okay.
we just
Or
distribute
you'll
the budget.
deliver it.
Yeah, we'll still take the breakfast.
So put it on your calendar.
Okay.
You should.
By the way, I will be gone from May 11th through about the 21st, so.
Are we doing individual meetings?
Are we doing individual meetings with all departments and agencies this year?
I'm fine.
I'm
However you wanna
fine.
do it.
Fine with doing it?
Fine.
I don't know if we can do this where it's not done uniformly across all the departments. There are several I'm more than satisfied with. There are 3 or 4 that I definitely want to sit in on. We need to have a session with the sheriff. We need to have a session with the Board of Education or with the school system, and a session with the community college at the minimum. I mean, those are our big ticket ones.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, I don't,
Need
the other ones,
on.
yeah, the other things I'm fine with where we are unless somebody's got an issue.
That makes sense.
There is one, though, we might want to consider in addition, though. Parks and Rec has now got a big public-private thing going on. And I would like to see, and then the city's just done some appropriations or planning to do some debt. I'd like to see how all that's going to fit together and affect our budget as well. But that would be the 4th one, potentially.
How about the nonprofits? I know you mentioned Johnston Lee Hornet earlier, coming back during the budget process. Just trying to make sure we cover our bases, so you don't get caught later on and missing
Probably,
something.
You know, and then DSS and health, so, you know, we probably, you know, could take the big ones and the outside agencies and probably get it done in 3 or 4 instead of doing the
Right.
16 to 17 that we did last year. And I put that schedule together.
Yeah.
And if anything else comes up where we need to call somebody in, we'll just schedule another session.
As long as we don't get into legal issues about doing some departments, not doing others, you know, not treating them uniformly, I guess we're all right. We have that discretion, right?
Yes, sir. You have that discretion on how to review your budget.
Good.
Or review the county manager's budget.
See, I get nervous because the school system sometimes make noise about lawsuits and stuff, and I don't want them to say, well, we treated them unfairly and everybody else did get treated the same way.
Well, they make up
That's routine.
almost half your budget. You should meet with them.
That's always the case.
You don't meet with anybody else but them. You should meet with them. They're half your budget.
Right?
I know it. You got it.
Explain everything.
Huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
move to approve. The calendar.
Thank you.
As presented.
All those in favor of the calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you.
You're back.
You added items to the agenda before I come back.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. We have item H. I can go through this one pretty quickly. The Board of Education is trying to sell a very small piece of property near Greenwood School under North Carolina General Statute 115C-518 and 168-269. The Board of County Commissioners always gets the first right of refusal to buy the property before they can sell it. And I gave you a map, but it's not really something that we would want. It's this very slim piece of property that goes along. If you've been down to the Greenwood School and you know where the fast stop is right there, it's between the driveway and their property. Most people thought it was their property already. It has a couple of underground storage tanks in it.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing really that was over the property line was the pump.
Yes, with the pond.
The tanks are out of the way, so.
So I have, since we just got this, I haven't had a chance to really look over it. The property owners are just wanting to purchase it from the school because they thought they owned it already.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the schools have no interest in it.
liability of
Right, right,
getting the pump off of the school property.
And so the Board of Education went through their process of declaring it a surplus, took the bid, this guy is the high bidder, and
We're in sell mode, not buy mode.
we're, exactly.
Ask them if they want anything else.
Okay, we have a
We were
motion
looking at
on
the
the
map
floor.
today.
We have a motion on the floor to approve. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that carried. Resolution, I believe, Jim?
Yeah, I'll just briefly introduce this because we're going late. We had we found out after our last commissioners meeting that there had been a school board resolution that was apparently unanimous that said they voted to support and to join the North Carolina School Board Association in its lawsuit against the state of North Carolina, opposing school vouchers so there were greater choice for low-income parents around the state to publicly educate their children. And after going back and reviewing the legislation from Session Law 2013-360, I didn't see anything in there that I would find objectionable, and I thought, well, I will draft a resolution for this board to at least hopefully counter what the school board has done, and sending it up to our legislators to make sure they understand they don't speak for Lee County, that the bankers of Lee County agree with that bill, and that there is every reason why we should give more low-income parents school opportunity or choice where their children are educated. And I think this is a fairly worded resolution. I'm open. This was a draft. I'm open to any suggestions that y'all would want to make to see this thing better stated. If you can think of some other words.
Yes, sir, well, you could remove, but, that's your call.
And I was just going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we take a look at it, kick it around between now and the February meeting, because there's no big hurry on sending that up. The legislature won't go into session again until, I think, May. But I think we need to make sure that the state understands where the county stands on this issue.
So it's for review, okay.
Yeah, it's just for review, and any inputs that you got, I'll be glad to redraft it and then send it up to Gino.
Well, let me just ask, is it necessary for us to criticize our own school board? We're taking a position, Nathan.
No, I don't think so. And in fact,
You don't think that does that?
No, it does. It does. It's not necessary. I'm answering your question. It's not necessary for us to scold our school board on an inappropriate action. I mean, we can do that directly. We don't have to signal that to the state. So if you would like to suggest those modifications, I'll be glad to look at that.
Oh, that's right. That's your business.
Well, and the other thing too that bothers me, Jim, is, they're elected officials as well.
But they weren't elected by the taxpayers to appropriate monies, and in fact, I think one of the reasons they don't have that authority is because they're using tax dollars
To sue
the state. I mean, that's just inappropriate.
Well, they're okay. I'll get a look.
Okay,
All right.
take a look.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to monthly financial report.
We have the EDC change of merger update first. Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just want you up here, Lisa. We miss you.
That's all right.
I think we finalized
trying to make sure you
Old
stay.
minutes on archives.
Yeah.
Man, your name is in there. I mean, that's going back decades.
That's right.
I just want you to know.
Okay, brief overview of
You
where
are.
we are, Mr. Reed.
Beg your pardon?
A brief overview of where we are
Yes, sir.
is, we've been meeting, discussing the qualifications for a new director. One of the issues that came up, of course, was the incentives program. We sat down with both public and private representatives as a subcommittee and hashed out some language, and we've been reviewing that language. I think it's on its final review. I know Chetman had some, or not Chet, but
Brad Simpson wanted to.
Brad Simpson had some,
Yeah.
a couple of changes he wanted to make, but it was a very amicable meeting, and I think we've got it on track and should bring it back to the board this next month.
This is a meeting, after the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
after the official.
When's the next
Right,
meeting?
okay.
They always meet the first Thursday in the
And
month.
there's not a number in between.
No.
And just to synopsize what's in that, if you haven't already seen the draft, Crystal did this thing up. She did a masterful job.
I'd like to see the draft
Yeah.
you're talking about, I haven't seen it.
Well,
Can we get?
do you not have a
Well, she preferred that we not,
she didn't want to
not distribute it until the people
board
that met
that's-
to do it and get final language in, so we don't have too many copies out there.
Sure.
All right, I respect.
The essence of it is something we suggested at our last board meeting, which was we don't have to, and they don't currently have our financial incentives guidelines posted to the web.
Right.
That's you have to dig down in the county's internal policies and that sort of thing to find that. And we suggested you don't have to put it out on the web. That's our internal guidelines. You don't have to put it out there to say closed for business or whatever the term they want to use, the term du jour. So what we suggested was put something more positively worded that correctly synopsizes the county's position on economic growth and related incentives. And so she's done that, and she's captured the essence of the city and the county and all the other things that we're willing to discuss with potential companies. And that's a very positively worded document, and there was no pushback on it.
Yeah, in fact, what it was is we wanted some language that was marketable,
Yeah.
and we discussed marketing and other issues that we really need to be concentrating more on to meet our economic strategy plan,
Okay,
and everybody was in agreement with that.
It was a non-eventful meeting.
all right.
Okay.
I respect Barbara didn't read that one.
Well,
They weren't there.
they were there, so,
Obviously, they were not,
yeah.
they were not at that meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I would make one final comment about all of this, because there seems to be this perception in the community that we have these massive gaps between the public entities, the jurisdictions of the city, the county, the EDC, and others. And I just got to tell you that what separates us is a sliver. On the vast preponderance of concerns and issues we're facing this county, we're in absolutely united. It's just on the incentives, and we're even divided on this board about that. But everything else, I got to tell you, we're almost in lockstep, and we all want to see the county grow, and we're all leaning forward. It's just we don't want to make that one thing the preeminent issue that dominates the discussion. We need to focus our energy on a lot of the other things that need addressing.
In fact, that board and then the school board meetings that we've been having with the chair and vice chair and the superintendent has been very amicable. And so we started a year ago, John?
We've been, I've been, as Mr. Tatum said, I've been attending chair and vice chair meetings for about 6 years.
Yeah.
So, I think all the chairmen for both boards, we may have a hiatus for a few months, but they get right back into it.
Right.
So,
And we all seem to be working together for the same goals, so.
They might change when they see this resolution.
Actually, when we sat down last week, I made that point that was a little upset that the taxpayers' money was being used to sue the taxpayers, and I made that point.
He made a
And
point.
they accepted it.
But then we went on and discussed the rest of the stuff amicably, so we did fine. Okay, Ms. Lisa, try to get everybody out of here real quick.
You have before you the monthly financial report for the month of December. If you look at on page 85 in your package, you will see that we are we are ahead on ad valorem tax revenue, almost to the tune of almost 8% of where we were the same time last year. Part of this is due to the new motor vehicle tax and tax system, okay? It's very hard for us to distinguish exactly how much of that is attributed to that, but that is where part of that is coming from, okay? Because obviously with the lower tax rate, we should not be exceeding revenues this quickly.
Question on that.
They don't divide that out for you?
I can't necessarily go back very quickly and get last year's numbers to compare this year's numbers to.
okay.
I will try to get with Mary. Mary is on vacation right now and try to look at that before I give you the January
No, I was
report.
just wondering when they started the new process if they divided that out for you.
Yes, now I get monthly reports because we now get a monthly remittance from the Department of Transportation with those funds, so I do have monthly reports now.
Okay.
Do we get to keep the penalty money? Does the county keep that, or does the state skim that?
We keep it.
Good.
I mean, it comes in there's,
No, I'm saying, I had to pay it. I had to pay it on one of my vehicles, and I was just hoping.
Calling it a penalty, but it's actually interest.
Well, whatever it is, I mean, if we're keeping it, that should contribute to
You
the.
don't call it a
think
penalty,
it's
because if it's a
penalty
penalty, it
because-
goes to the Board of Education.
Does it?
It's interest.
Oh, that's what it is, okay. I knew there was something about the legislature.
You'll be careful with terminology.
Whatever you call it.
That extra you had to pay.
That extra I had to pay, the county gets to keep it, that's good.
as far as other things go, the expenditures, we're looking at approximately 50%. You still have basically the same departments that have been running over all year long. A lot of it's due to just timing of issues. Our budgets have gotten tightened enough that, when you make a major expense at the front of the year, it takes a while for it to balance out for the whole year and get you back in line. You also have sales tax collections through the month of October attached. At this time, we are tracking slightly behind sales tax budgets. If you look on page 88 of your package, for this year, you will see that on Article 39, we're at about where we should be, and that's pretty close. But on Article 40 and 42, we are running behind where we should be, and on Article 46, we're running behind. And of course, we're slightly skewed this year because of the change in distribution. So if you go to page 90, you will see where I've looked at the county-wide total, and there is some concern there in our tax base and our tax growth in sales tax. Overall, we're down 0.38%, if I can read that number. Article 46, which is probably the cleanest tracking method of everything, we're down about 1.64 from the previous year. So we are still trying to monitor this and see how we're tracking from month to month on budget. And we'll try to keep you up to date as much as we can. And I'm sure if I get concerned enough, Mr. Crumpton will start taking actions to control spending somewhat. But we did not budget growth, and we're probably kind of conservative in our numbers with the change even.
Turned out to be smart.
We tried. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your nice presentation.
You're welcome.
I heard something on the news earlier today and just caught the tail end of it. Did I hear correctly that Amazon is now going to be collecting North Carolina's sales tax?
And starting February 1st, they will be
Now, that's
collecting.
just state. Will they do local as well?
I would assume that if they're collecting sales tax, they'll collect the
they
state
have
and
to.
the county portion.
Well,
have to.
that's fairly
Should.
good news. I mean, it might not be, I have no
Well,
way
depends
of
on
knowing,
your
but-
frame of reference, right?
Well,
The
yeah,
buyer.
but I mean, if it's
Should have.
being purchased in the county and we're not getting sales tax
Right.
from it,
It's gonna go nationwide, I mean, at some point.
Sure, but I mean, in all fairness,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
unfair to the
Oh,
brick
sorry.
and mortar
I think
stores.
it's just the big stores that have to do it.
Right.
I always got a comment till I see a check.
No, but I mean, I just wanted to make sure I did hear that right, and then, if it would trickle.
And it's supposed to be
folks.
point of delivery, is how
Mhm.
sales tax is supposed to be tracked.
Correct.
So if it's delivered into Lee County, they should be collecting Lee County's rate, and we should get it. Now, to buy something off Amazon and see whether or not they collect 7% or 6 3/4, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, there are vendors that do not necessarily do it correctly.
Yeah.
Right.
And all vendors don't have to do it either, I don't think.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Mr. Crumpton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My report starts on page 92. I'll try to go quickly. We did receive approval from EDA to go out to bid on the Clyde Ryan Road project. And we are out to bid. The pre-bid was actually last Friday, and we're still targeting the bid opening on the 28th.
So completion of the bid is when?
The 28th. We'll have the bids next week, the 28th. We should have certified bid tab, and at our first February meeting, we have to award that contract with EDA approval. So we're moving quickly, and you can see that we have to make a October 15th closeout of all work to EDA. That is their deadline. So
So it goes to EDA first and then comes back to us.
yes, sir. The East and Wesley Middle School project, I did touch base with ABM on Friday. They're supposed to meet with the Board of Education staff this week to finalize the report, and we should have a report next week so that we can discuss it at our February 3rd meeting. And then also it's an agenda item with the joint meeting with the Board of Education on February 6th. So we should have hopefully be able to make some final decisions and decide where we're headed with that February 6th. We did receive on Friday at 4 o'clock another proposal for the Joint Community and Economic Development Use Facility. I keep calling it the old Belk Building. The developers called it the Uptown Center.
Right.
So they have I have it on my desk. I have not been able to evaluate it. I plan on sending it out to everybody and then scheduling a walkthrough just like we did for the Buggy Factory with them.
Is that on the opposite side of Steel Street?
It is on the same side.
Same side as the building?
It is adjacent to the building we own.
Okay.
And it's the old Belk Building, so I don't know, it's right there off Steel.
Eddie's Florist.
Yes.
And there was an interior design of it, it's closed, but it's that.
We, under other items, our intern, Michael James, is here tonight. He's in the back.
Michael's already done some good work for us.
He has.
Appreciate it.
Excellent work.
Michael normally has class on Monday night, but since the meeting got moved to Tuesday night, he was able to attend. So we're glad he was able to be here. And his Monday class ends in March, so he may miss 1 or 2 more meetings, but after that, he'll be with us. Yes, sir.
Was this building one of the proposals to substitute the Buggy Factory?
No, we have 2 proposals. One is the Buggy Factory and the one is the Uptown Center. So we have just those 2 proposals.
And we didn't actually vote, I don't recall, to close out on a particular day, right? We still got our options open?
No, we did not say.
Because I've heard of 2 other facilities that were interested but just couldn't scramble in time. One of them on North Horner Boulevard, and one of them I think over in the Kendale area. And I would certainly like to encourage completing those, getting those on the table, so we have a smorgasbord of things to choose from.
We did say the proposals, we wanted it in by January 20th.
Right.
But it's going to take a while to do the evaluation. So if anybody else has a proposal,
I still think
bring
we
it on.
need to set, February 28th, we don't need to leave it open-ended, I wouldn't think,
Well, what we should drive the decision on when to close out based on when's the drop dead date on, because I think, everybody was focused initially on just going sole source into the Buggy Factory. And I'm thinking if they could tell us, in order to be able to occupy on this date, this is the last date you got for us to move forward, then we could drive our decision by then. I would hate to just arbitrarily put a date out there that say we got to make our decision.
Well, I would think, from the date, in talking with those folks, it's going to take 12 months from the date we execute a contract with them for the Buggy Factory to be outfitted. So, we had revised the target date to July 1st, 2015.
Right.
So, it's going to take 90 days probably to get contracts and everything together. So if you
By
go
1
much,
April.
if you go much beyond March 31st, you're jeopardizing it. So I don't think the February.
Well, that should be an option too, don't you?
Yes,
that is another option. You got it.
Actually, I was thinking that today.
It
So,
is, absolutely.
What did you say?
they might be willing to take one of the buildings and buy it and do it themselves. You never know. So
What, March, do we need a motion for March 31st?
I would prefer the February 28th.
Yeah, I think he's right, because he needs 30 days to go through all the submissions and all
Look
that.
at the first meeting in March, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's February. Well, we're not meeting the first meeting in March.
So then the middle of March would be.
Well, then you start to push that final date.
28's fine. No, 28's fine.
Just say March 1st.
28.
You make that formal motion.
Okay, let's see. Make sure I'm not saying a Sunday. Okay. How about Monday, March the 3rd? Okay? Okay,
Is that Monday, are we meeting?
No.
We're not meeting on that one, so if you wanna make a decision, you're gonna have to do it before then.
That'd
Well,
give me
decision-
2
But that
weeks.
would give him time to.
That'd give me a couple weeks to
look at it
evaluate
before we
and
meet,
and
or
go over
if
with
it
the
gets
board.
2 or 3 or 4 in. Okay, so I make a motion,
Bless
to,
you.
to extend the deadline for, additional proposals for the joint use, community and economic development joint use facility
Yeah.
until Monday, March the 3rd. For each college department.
Are we gonna do a public service announcement or advertisement or anything?
We should advertise it.
We advertised the
We
last
did,
one,
we
we'll
did
advertise this
already.
one
Let's
too.
advertise it.
And we'll put it back out on the web.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, Jeff.
On page 93, Congresswoman Renee Elmers will be visiting Challenging Printing on February 17th. I think we've been invited to Challenge Printing from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, and then she'll be at the Innovation Center from 3 to 4:30. After that, you have the upcoming meetings. We do have a busy February. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings in February. And that's it for my report, Mr. Chairman.
That it, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess. Commissioner Craig, you want to start off?
All right, everybody have a safe evening home, and let's be safe tomorrow. So, thank you.
Real quick, jog my memory again, addressing the manager. Do we have a meeting set up with the city?
No, we do not yet.
Okay, okay. And.
We were waiting for those building items to come in. We met with them again.
Could we maybe set up something since we've extended it to March the 3rd?
You
So
want to
we
go ahead and
don't-
meet with them?
Hmm?
Okay.
What do you think, Jim? I mean, because it was nice to meet with them every quarter.
Oh, yeah.
And if we wait until we get this in March 3rd, you've missed 2 quarters.
And I gotta tell you, I'm encouraged by some of the language I'm hearing out of the council meetings and all that. There's some forward-looking initiatives that could really pay some dividends for this community, so I'm looking forward to meeting with them.
Especially moving the budget season and stuff. I think
Yep.
it's important for us to get together.
You bet.
John. And the other thing, is, just, everybody keep, former Commissioner Ed Paschal in your prayers. He, is back in hospital, and I can give you more information.
Is it local?
Mhm. Drive safely home.
Since our last meeting, I've taken 2 surveys, one for the cooperative extension, the other one for the community college. I trust you all did yours. And then last night, we were featured on television, so all 3 minutes you got to see soldiers in the background. I was there.
We'll get your autograph.
No.
Just one comment tonight. I want to commend Commissioner Smith and the cooperative extension for the Young Commissioners Program. And I'm real impressed with the youthful energy and the zeal on those kids. I tell you what, it just reinvigorates my morale every time they get together. They're meeting again this week. It's an incredible program. I think it's going to pay real dividends in the community. It's going to excite some young folks about getting involved more in local government. They've got great ideas. They've got a charter that they've agreed to now, and they're gonna move forward. I think it's reassuring to know that there are young folks out there that care about how we're managed and organized in the county. I'm just really pleased with it.
Yeah, and if you know any young people, it's 14, right? 14 to 18?
You know, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
I thought it was
Yeah, it's.
13,
But anyway, if
12.
you know some young people, please encourage them to apply, because these kids had a ball out of it. Plus, you can just see
Oh, yeah.
dynamically how much they had improved during that 2 weeks. It was just phenomenal to watch.
And what they did is I don't think everybody is aware, they voted to sustain the program, not just make it a 2-week last year and then they're done. They voted to sustain the program, and all these kids are coming back to these meetings now, and they're gonna be mentors for the future young commissioners that come in. So it'll be a growing organization, and they're nonpartisan, and they've got great ideas, a lot of energy, and I think it's gonna be inspiring.
Well,
And
they've-
Billstone does it great.
Yeah,
Yeah, he does.
they've
Bill does a
developed some
coverage.
close relationships in the
Yep.
group itself, so I think that's another important feature for it.
You see some of them up here one day.
I hope so.
Hopefully.
Commissioner Reeves?
Move to adjourn.
I didn't have a chance to say it.
Okay. Move to adjourn.
So I'll override your adjournment. Thank you guys for staying. I appreciate you. Be safe going home. I do think we've accomplished some things on the board this year that with the joint meetings that we've had with chairs and vice chairs, we've met with the counties, Chatham and Harnett, and we've developed some relationships there, sharing of ideas. The committee that we have with the city, Chet Mann, we had lunch with him not too long ago, and he wants to keep that going too, because it does develop good relationships. Meeting with the schools and the college, we probably will meet with the college and trustees more this year too. So anyway, those are some of the things. I think things that would help me, and I noticed with the Fort Bragg initiative, there was a lot of things there I didn't know about it. I would encourage you on the boards that you're assigned to, is if you could give us a short synopsis once in a while, just to bring us up to date on what the boards are doing, to see if, one, how well the county's doing. Secondly, is if they're not doing anything, we need to know that too. So, okay, now I'll accept your motion to adjourn. Commissioner Reeves, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sled dogs away.